including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by the Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please let me know. Seeing none, I will proceed with the first item of business, which is the
I'd like to nominate Councillor Malik.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher has nominated Councillor Malik. I'm calling for nominations again. Seeing none, are there any further nominations for a third and final time? Seeing none, I declare that as Councillor Malik is the only nominee, she is now the chair of the Subcommittee on Metrolinx Ontario Line Construction. Congratulations, Councillor Malik. I ask you to take the chair.
I'll also note, Clerk, that Councillor Moyes is with us electronically behind us there. Hello.
Congrats, Councilman.
Yeah. Here? All right. We good now? The screen is really, really big. Good morning, and before we continue with the second item, I'd like to go over the administrative details for this meeting. Today's meeting is being held with members of council and city staff participating both by video conference and in person at City Hall and Committee Room 2. We currently have speakers who have been connected to the meeting by video conference, and there are public speakers in the room with us today. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Subcommittee on Metrolinx's Ontario Line Construction page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I ask everyone for their patience with any delays and technical issues. For each agenda item, I will ask members to raise their hands or unmute their mic if they wish to question staff or speak. I will then create a speakers list and will call on members when it is their turn to speak. When voting on an item or a motion, I ask that members ensure that they turn on their video if applicable and to raise their hand to indicate their vote. Members, this is a paperless meeting, and I want to remind you that you must submit and approve your motions by email. Staff are available at teycc@toronto.ca to help with motions. If there are any visiting members of council attending the meeting today, please turn on your video so that I know you are present. Are there any? And can give you the opportunity to ask questions of staff or speak. This will also assist the clerk staff in recording member attendance for the minutes of the meeting. The second item is TM 1.2, update on Metrolinx's Ontario Line construction within the Toronto and East York District. There is a staff report with recommendations, and if I can just, I guess underscore the mandate and purpose of this subcommittee. It is to ensure that there's an opportunity as the Ontario Line construction and implementation is occurring imminently, and we are committed to ensuring that public transit is built well in our city. There's an opportunity for community stakeholders and residents to have their voices heard into this process, and for us to be able to engage the information that we have at the city to make clear recommendations on implementation and construction to Metrolinx and the provincial government, which will be so important for a project at this scale. We have speakers registered on this item, and I will ask the clerk to confirm that the speakers are ready to proceed. Welcome to the Subcommittee on Metrolinx's Ontario Line Construction. You have 5 minutes to speak. When you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know. All right, I rushed ahead. I just let everyone know what the parameters were, but I would like to invite Don Young, co-chair of Federation of South Toronto Residents Associations, FOSTRA, Advocacy and Activism Committee. Welcome to the Subcommittee on Metrolinx's Ontario Line Construction. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know. And I guess as you start, we'll start the time. Take it away, Don.
Yeah. I'm the director for Ward 11 and the co-chair of the Federation of South Toronto Residents Associations Advocacy and Activism Committee, as well as the delegate to FOSTRA from the Grange Community Association. Paris did it in the 17th century. Recently, Copenhagen, San Francisco, and Shanghai have all done what Toronto has so far been too timid to do: create its own grand boulevard, its Champs-Élysées, in the heart of a world-class city. The proposed but neglected and unfunded University Park, extending from Front Street to College, would transform Toronto with a verdant entrance and a healthy downtown playground. These three cities face the same problems with their proposed linear parks along major thoroughfares. Copenhagen had the Vestboro Passage, San Francisco its Market Street, and Shanghai its Xinhua Waterfront Park. These were difficult undertakings, and it took political willpower to make them happen. Leadership in these cities realized that such projects would promote community, spur cultural and economic development. It was part and parcel of their human-centered approach to building, city building, and why can't Toronto do the same? Bold's proposed alternative for Osgood Station would be a first step in that direction. In addition to preserving one of the most important historic properties in Canada, the new proposal by Steve Munro and Liz Driver takes into consideration all of the concerns stated in the Parsons report, as well as the communities. It would be much safer for pedestrians and would cost not much more once this massive project is underway. For this reason, the Federation of South Toronto Residents Associations is supporting it, and Rick Green, FOSTRA's chair, has made a separate written submission to that effect. In terms of mitigating the damage already done to the Osgood Hall property, if Bold's proposal is adopted, I would ask the subcommittee to insist that the mature trees cut down at both Osgood and Moss Park be replaced by Metrolinx with equally mature ones, like Goderich did after the tornado hit its the center of its city. Within months, the decimated forest surrounding Goderich's town hall was restored. This should be Toronto's response to the Ontario Line tornado. I thank the subcommittee for listening to me and other citizens concerned about Metrolinx's plan for the Ontario Line. I fully support Liz Driver's 20th of March letter and her written submission, as well as Steve Munro's presentation this morning concerning Osgood Station, and I look forward to the subcommittee's response. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Don. Members, do you have any questions for speakers?
Yes, thank you, Don. I would have liked to have seen you up on that screen, but I can't. So welcome to the subcommittee. I know that you're aware that the city doesn't have a lot of control. Well, actually, no control over Metrolinx and what they're doing. But one of the things that today I'm going to move a motion asking about the caliper of the trees that are being replaced. There are so many coming down. Would you support that, understanding what their thinking is, so we can actually ask for them to put trees of a certain caliper in? Right now, there's no requirement of any kind.
Absolutely. I would very much approve of that motion.
Good. Thank you. I'll be moving that later.
Thank you. Are there
Ask
any
why
other
they can't.
questions from members? Councillor Moyes?
Can't see.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I'm good. Thank you, Councilor Mallett.
Thank you very much, Dawn, for addressing the subcommittee on Metrolinx's Ontario Line construction today. I'm going to move on to the next speaker, Liz Driver, Director and Curator of Campbell House Museum. Welcome to the subcommittee, and you have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm the director of Campbell House Museum at the northwest corner of Queen and University. The foundation has, the Sir William Campbell Foundation, which governs the museum, has always aimed to bring forward positive ideas to help solve the problems at Osgood. I'm also the co-chair with Waleed Kigali of the BOLD Coalition, Build Ontario Line Differently. The foundation was grateful that the city commissioned the third-party review by Parsons, which looked at alternative locations. Parsons found that the Osgood Garden would appear to be the best qualified option for the design of the station, with a workable design for both the keyhole excavation site and the vertical circulation needed to connect with Line 1 of our subway. Of course, they didn't receive enough information to prove the fatal flaws of the other alternative designs, but we need to move on. So on February 23rd, Metrolinx proceeded with Parsons Location A. They removed all the mature trees on its expropriated Osgood land to prepare for construction. So we now have a new condition. All the efforts over the past year have been to save the trees. Of course, it was not always only about the trees, and to find another place for the keyhole. But that keyhole, we must accept now, will happen there. So we need a new response. No one has ever looked at or discussed the idea of the keyhole being in the Osgood Garden, but having no above-ground infrastructure, just connecting at the concourse level underneath and putting the station building in University Park. Metrolinx is already going to have a connection at the concourse level, and I'd like to emphasize that the city has control over University Park, and in fact, Metrolinx used University Park as an excuse not to solve the problem. They said there was not enough, they couldn't get a commitment from the city about University Park. So Steve Monroe and I are proposing what I'm going to call a design modification. It really is Metrolinx's plan, but with a little change. But a change that will have so many benefits. So I want to comment on the benefits of the design modification, time considerations, community support, and some recommendations. The benefits of the design modification are so many. It would maintain 100% of the green space, so you wouldn't lose the footprint of the station building. The whole garden would still be green. You may have more space for replanting Osgood's trees because of shifting the location of the concourse level slightly. You'd retain the integrity of the historic fence. Now, Metrolinx next summer wants to discuss with us two choices: wrapping that fence around a contemporary station building, which from a heritage perspective is just unthinkable and preposterous, or cutting a hole in the fence and losing that piece of fence, which is also unacceptable. Those are not choices, but this design modification would allow us to keep the historic fence and 100% of the green space. And it would also be the motivation to kickstart University Park, and I'm afraid about leaving it until after the Ontario Line construction is done. There's flexibility. The one thing that popped out in the staff update was that City staff have also requested that pedestrian access around the north entrance be improved to address the potential volume of passenger activity at the station and adjacent streets. To my mind, it's impossible. It's impossible for Metrolinx to do that. We have our sidewalks, and the only way to improve access is to make University Park. And importantly, we would coordinate the implementation of University Park with Metrolinx's rehabilitation of the intersection after completion of the line. It would be efficient and economical from a city perspective to have Metrolinx reassemble the South African War Memorial in a location that the city determines is best for University Park, not take it down again and reposition it later. So, the time considerations, that the reconfiguration of the concourse that Steve is going to explain, that needs to be pursued immediately with Metrolinx. But we have time to fine-tune the work on University Park over the long stretch. The city needs to commit to that expanded pedestrian area. That's what we need. There has been no negative feedback in all the conversations I've had about this design modification.
You can wrap up in 30 seconds?
Oh, yes. So my recommendations are in the letter. The most important ones are that I would recommend that the subcommittee endorses the design modification being proposed, that the subcommittee invites CEO Phil Ferster, the only decision maker, to meet with you, that you invite the main stakeholders at the intersection to discuss this, and that you ask the relevant city staff to expedite all the work that's needed for this design modification in University Park. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liz. Are there any questions from members for the deputy?
Good morning, Liz. Hi.
Hello.
Thanks for all your work. Just on I'm not that familiar with this section. I'm very familiar with my above ground and 7 station else, but in the design modifications, does Metrolinx have to approve any components of the design modifications, or are they only city-led design modifications, or are they part of the Metrolinx plan itself?
Well, of course it would require Metrolinx's cooperation, but I think we can see that the entire project, all the way along the line, where it intersects with the TTC and city infrastructure in the public realm, requires coordination and collaboration. So the extent to it, we can't know until the conversations happen. And Steve Monroe would be able to speak a little bit more to
I hear you, but I think since I've been dealing with these issues for 4 years with Metrolinx, I just need to know whose decision it is. Is it the city's decision to proceed, or would it be Metrolinx's decision to proceed?
It would be their decision
So Metrolinx's decision.
to adapt, to make any
adopt
design
it.
modification.
Yes, so let's be real clear on
Oh,
what that looks
absolutely.
like. Okay, so Metrolinx, there'd be some suggestions for design modifications which could be forwarded to Metrolinx, and then, as we know, it's up to Metrolinx to decide if they will or won't.
And if I could say, I think that the design modification needs to be examined by city staff, and if overall all of the benefits, there will be benefits to do with circulation and so on, this could be a win-win, and I can't speak to all the details of it.
Really, win-win would be great. I guess I just want to understand clearly that you understand that, as great as this might be, that Metrolinx is always the final decision maker and can yay or nay any great idea that comes from the community, as we've seen quite a few times already.
Yes, I have seen actually rare instances of Metrolinx changing their plans in response to reasonable discussion, and that would be with their plan to store the Stone Bank building on Queen Street directly on a city and community project.
Oh, I do
and they did
understand
change.
that.
Yeah.
I understand they can change. I just want to be really clear, it's their decision, nothing that we can move forward directly, right?
True.
Okay, Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members have questions for the deputant?
Councilor Mo's likes to ask one question.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me okay? Thank you, Diane, for coming in today to depute. I do have one question. I know you focused on University and Queen, but, we have had similar concerns, at Sherburne and Queen, around the Moss Park area. Thoughts about perhaps, rather than doing these things in silos, that, perhaps working with other communities and bring forth one wholesome proposal around where stations should be located and what's best for each community, rather than, my station versus someone else's station. I know that's not your intention, but it comes out that way, which is, I find, problematic.
Oh, I'd love to comment on that, Councillor Moyes. So, of course, each community is focused on the impacts on it. One thing that I found so extraordinary with the foundation or the formation of the Bold Community Coalition is the parallels between what has happened at Osgood and also at Moss Park. And I really do agree with you about silos. One of the problems, I think, is that the system for communications and flow of information, the whole process with the Ontario line, which has been stick-handled, like it's Metrolinx's process. And I feel that there has not been enough conversation between city staff, councillors, and the community, enough of a sense of agency that we can bring forward our ideas. And I think that this subcommittee and the Bold Coalition I'm sorry that both of these things have taken so long, because the official legal public process is finished. But we still have the vehicle of the subcommittee and the Bold Coalition to reinforce each other and to highlight very similar issues. And Moss Park is going to need a holistic approach to get the best outcome. These projects are huge, and we have to bring all of the resources of the city, our creativity, to it to get a good outcome. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead, Councillor Fletcher.
We're in a subcommittee, so we can break the rules a little bit, right? Thank you. I'm just looking at what tenders have been let already, which was very helpful in this report. Thank you, Mr. Toigo, to know that the rolling stock systems operation and maintenance contract was awarded for $9 billion. The Southern Civil Stations and Tunnel, basically the zone that we're talking about, has been awarded already to Ontario Transit Group. Have you looked into how, because they are segmented as contracts, have you looked into how any of these things would work with the fact now that there is a construction general contractor for this area? So it's not into design, they're in charge now, kind of. How do you think that would work?
Well, as I understand it, the project co will take over and execute the plan. And Metrolinx has stated May the 1st for Osgood, so I'm only just speaking about Osgood at the moment.
Sorry, interrupting you. The project co is for the closures, advanced works, and those kinds of things, right? It's a separate contract that's been let as well for road works, basically.
I understand, and a staff person might be better to speak to this, but I understood that the project co executes the project.
Okay, it's a really interesting piece in our report.
So
Page 6, sorry.
yeah, I don't have the report
Okay.
right in front of me, but changes in any big project, sometimes changes can be made, and I think the task for this committee is is to ask the
Yes,
questions of
I
staff.
understand.
Yeah.
No, I get that. It's just whether we can make it happen. So I will ask staff about where that southern civil stations and tunnel is at, which might be helpful for all of us to know about all the contracts. Sure. Okay. Thank you so much.
Any additional questions? Thank you very much, Liz, for addressing the subcommittee today. Next speaker is Steve Monroe. Councillor Bravo has joined us. Welcome. Welcome to the subcommittee, Steve, and you have 5 minutes to speak. And when you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know. Please go ahead when you're ready.
I'll just say I'm not going to attempt to go into all the fine details of the presentation that I have, because that won't fit in 5 minutes, but we can deal with clarifications in the Q&A afterwards. So as Liz said, the purpose of this is to find a way to get the best we can out of the Osgood Station situation. The trees are gone, and so one of the ironies is that the Parsons report in effect is a moot point now, because it was all addressing designs whose sole purpose was to preserve the trees. Well, the trees are gone. So the question now is how to make the best of a bad situation. The diagram that's on this page shows the Metrolinx plan, and the white square that's within the larger red square on the northeast corner of Queen University is the so-called keyhole where Metrolinx plans to excavate down to the new Ontario Line station. To the upper left of that red box, you can see a connection to the existing University Line station that will go out of the entrance. So that's Metrolinx's proposal. The issue is, can we relocate the entrance in a way that preserves the garden? Of course, if you were going to keep the trees, that wasn't an option, because you would have to move all of the structure out of the garden, and there simply wasn't enough room in the surrounding area to pick up the entire Metrolinx structure and shift it either into University Avenue or somewhere else. So the Parsons report, as I said, focused on tree preservation. That's a moot point now. They looked at various plans, the Metrolinx plan, an entrance on the boulevard of University Avenue, the Teal Core plan with the University Park, and Osgood Plaza, which is another version they looked at. It's a similar layout. And they concluded that the only place you could put it was within the garden, and of course, that's because of the physical space available. So the question then becomes, is there a way to deal with this? Now that the trees are gone, is there a design change that could fix some of the problems? You're not going to make the trees come back automatically, but can you make it possible for them to come back? So the proposal is to move the station entrance, as Liz said, into the University Park, Osgood Plaza, as in Site C that Parsons looked at, and connect it below grade so that you have separate vertical circulation from the entrance building down to the concourse, which is the existing subway entrance, and then separately within the proposed Metrolinx construction down to the Ontario line, so that you don't have the entrance on the Osgood Hall lands. So that's Metrolinx's proposal in cutaway. You can see the sort of salmon-y colored, it's a pretty pathetic salmon, but the Ontario Line station at the bottom goes across, and there are the two new proposed entrances, one on the Osgood Hall lands, one over at Simcoe Street in the bank building. And there's a picture in the upper right of the proposed Metrolinx entrance within the Osgood Hall lands. So the issue here is to basically slice the Metrolinx structure into two pieces. And the top piece, which is shown in the red arrow, and also would shift to the west, so that basically the whole entrance building, you pick it up and slide it west. Now, obviously, that's impossible if you don't build University Park, because there isn't enough room on the sidewalk to put the entrance building there. But if you build University Park, you've now got all of the northbound traveled lanes of University Avenue as extra space. So you wind up, instead of having a single vertical access, you slide the entrance building across. This is a cutaway view of the existing subway, and an important point here is that the roof of the existing structure and of the concourse is just below grade, just 1 meter below grade. So if the concourse is built all the way across under Osgood Park, you cannot reestablish mature trees because there's not enough room for a root system. If the structure is shifted west, then the extent of the concourse into the park can be reduced, possibly eliminated. I suspect it's just reduced, and that means at least part of the park can be reforested. There was a view that the Metrolinx is going to extend into University Avenue. Anyhow, you can see the dotted red line shows the extent of their construction. One of the potential issues is to move the stair tower and elevators and everything, which is in the bottom right of that red area, shift it west as far as possible, because that's going to determine how far east the roof of the concourse comes. Obviously, a question for Metrolinx is how far west can they shift their structure? They have, in other conversations, said they can move about 4 meters. The big concern they have is not getting too close to the existing subway line that would undermine the subway structure. And obviously, from an arborist, you need to know how much headroom do you need. So in conclusion, basically create a split level entrance to Osgood Station so that the upper portion is in the University Park area and the lower portion, which is within the Metrolinx keyhole, basically stays where it is, largely stays where it is. And the idea is to allow Metrolinx can dig the hole and build their station. They're not going to be building the entrance building on top of it until the very end of the project. So it's not like they have to design it tomorrow. Also, to respond to a question that Councillor Fletcher raised, yes, contract has been awarded. A big part of that contract is taking the design from 30% design to 100% design. So it's not like they've got a 100% design sitting there that they're going to go out and start building tomorrow. So that's a really important distinction if Metrolinx says, oh, we can't change the design. They haven't finished the design. So that's the quick and dirty 6:30 version of the presentation.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Questions from members?
Well, I just ask you, obviously, given how quickly things are moving, understanding the design changes and the ability to work past the 30% with any changes of this nature and the change orders that would be required, if required, and the costing would be pretty important to get that quickly.
Yeah, obviously the question is, what cost is involved on the design side, and is Metrolinx willing to approach this as a gesture of good faith?
Correct.
Now, the flip side, you asked earlier about, the decision is not the city's to make, but what is the city's to make is to proceed with the University Park proposal, because there is absolutely no point in asking Metrolinx to change their station design if the city is not going to endorse the change in the road layout, which would allow the entrance building to be moved out of the park.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members?
Councillor Moyes. Councillor Moyes.
Councillor Moyes, go ahead.
So I appreciate your thank you for coming in today and presenting to us. And, I appreciate the detailed presentation that you presented. But the question I asked the previous speaker was that, we're speaking about Osgood and it's important historical area of the city, yes. But again, presenting in silos and speaking in silos, one station versus another. And I'm bringing up the Moss Park station again, in that there's a narrative that, are influential people, people who are, well, influential people, and people in the Moss Park area, are marginalized and their voice is not heard. So I'm just wondering, again, have you worked with other communities to talk about some of the changes that they would like to see? Because they don't have the influence that you do. So that's a long-winded question, but it's an important one.
Well, the first one I would mention would be the Leslieville Riverside area, which Councillor Fletcher can certainly speak to, because I worked with them on an alternative alignment proposal for the line through the East Harbor area. I've also helped give advice to people living at the north end of Pape Avenue in the Minton Place area, which where the line will open onto the Don Valley west of the Leaside Bridge. I've also been involved with people in Thorncliffe Park with the whole question of attempting to relocate the maintenance yard. As we all know, all of those efforts were unsuccessful for a variety of reasons. But yes, I have been involved with several groups along the line. Basically, anybody who wants to come and talk to me, I'll talk to. Now, the distinction is each site is different. So a major difference between Moss Park and Osgood, for example, is that Moss Park is not sitting beside a 6-lane road with a median 3 lanes wide in the middle of it. So there's a lot more room to play around with at Queen and University, because basically the University Park idea is to replace the median with an expanded pedestrian space. That option does not exist at Moss Park.
Steve, please don't
Yeah,
forget.
thank you for that response.
Don't forget our big victory on the layover, which isn't part of the Ontario.
Yes, yeah, that's
Pretty
let's go expansion. So.
Yes.
And I suspect that victory was as much because Alstom wants to bring their high-speed rail operations into downtown.
You know what? One thing at a time. Thank you. One thing. That's what I've learned. One thing at a time.
Claim it as a victory. Anyway.
No, it will be. Believe me. We're going to build a park there.
Any other questions from members? Can Councillor Bravo ask a question? All right. Councillor Bravo, any questions? Okay, thank you very much, Steve, for your presentation. Next, we have Tony Whitaker on the speakers list. And welcome to the subcommittee. Tony, you have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, we'll try and let you know. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair, councillors and staff. My name's Tony Whitaker, and I'm a member of the Lakeshore East Community Advisory Committee. Our mandate since our group's inception in 2017, 6 years ago, is to work cooperatively with Metrolinx on behalf of the community to mitigate coming projects on the Lakeshore East rail corridor through Riverside and Leslieville. We speak to you today as part of the bold coalition of community groups who have come together to be a resource for each other and create a united front in our efforts to build the Ontario line differently in our neighbourhoods. Members of the subcommittee will have heard from the Ontario line update that construction is beginning in both the Corktown and Riverside Leslieville areas. Soon, all our Ontario line communities will begin attending monthly Metrolinx construction liaison committees. Today, we would like to introduce a discussion of the Construction Liaison Committee meeting format, a format created by Metrolinx in which our City Council members will be attending alongside our community stakeholder groups. We anticipate that these CLC groups will be a main jumping off point for communities to bring their issues to this subcommittee, issues which are unresolved or resolved unsatisfactorily for communities, as we've been discussing this morning. As our Lakeshore community currently sits on 2 CLC groups for GO expansion projects, we have encountered many issues with their current format. Anticipate these issues will be ongoing, if not addressed at the early stages of the Ontario Line CLC meetings. We feel this is the ideal time to discuss the importance of the city's role in the CLC and the need for greater accountability and transparency from Metrolinx to our communities at these meetings. There are also inconsistency of accountabilities and reporting within different CLC project areas. which we would like to see standardized across all Ontario Line CLC community groups. With the help of the OL Subcommittee, we would like to ask Metrolinx for a consistent and base CLC format that includes defined accountabilities from Metrolinx. There must be greater transparency of information to include the wider community and not just stakeholders. These basic standards, which currently do not exist, can then be customizable and built on in agreement with each CLC membership. Basic CLC standards should also include access to project planners, decision makers, and managers at every meeting. We include a list of some of our suggestions for greater Metrolinx accountability and transparency for discussion by the subcommittee. We've submitted these suggestions in our letter, which because of time constraints we will not read in our deputation today. However, we suggest addressing the following. Meeting format. With the help of the OL Subcommittee, we would like to ask Metrolinx to work with member groups to co-create a consistent and basic CLC format that works for all members, Metrolinx, communities, and the city. There are currently inconsistencies of accountabilities, as I've mentioned, and reporting within different CLC project areas, which we would like to see standardized across all Ontario Line CLC community groups. Meetings should be held both in person and online, in other words, hybrid. We've only had meetings so far online. We're asking for a change there going forward. Accountability. Clearly defined accountabilities from Metrolinx to the community. Metrolinx is responsible for the oversight of its contractors. Processes need to be defined and put into place for handling complaints, addressing concerns, and finding resolutions with communities. Transparency. There must be mutual commitment to full transparency that ensures information from the CLC is communicated to the wider community and not just stakeholders. This may be publicly available minutes or recordings posted on a dedicated CLC Metrolinx web space. Access. CLC meeting basic standards should include any community member who is impacted by the construction and not just stakeholder groups invited to the meetings. All meetings should also provide access to Metrolinx project planners, decision makers, and managers. A 24-hour hotline to project managers on the work sites should be available once work begins. And I talk about noise and vibration concerns in the community and also overnight work, because this work is going to be going on 24/7. The city's role at CLC meetings. Many stakeholders at CLC meetings do not have a depth of information about the project nor understanding of what Metrolinx is accountable for. We believe the city has a key role to fill in helping community members understand the specific municipal bylaws that are applicable to construction planning and work that is going on in their community and helping to escalate community issues and concerns. We would like to encourage the subcommittee today to discuss the roles of city officials attending the Metrolinx CLC community meetings. Some of our questions are below. A, in what ways can the city's participation and project awareness be for our communities? B, what specific resources can the city bring to CLC meetings, i.e. representatives from Municipal Transit Office, bylaw enforcement, parks, forestry, to assist communities? C, can we standardize the municipal role so all communities at CLC meetings understand municipal and provincial accountabilities during Ontario Line planning and construction? We offer these suggestions in hopes that the city will also see the need for the standardization of accountability at CLC meetings. We look forward to further discussion around these important issues impacting all our Ontario Line communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Councillor Fletcher?
Go anywhere, Tony. How are you? I'm not sure, and even in the report, and I'm going to clarify that, what Metrolinx sees the role of the CLC. Is it around traditional CLCs, or once you have a project that people are there to look at the operations of it?
Yes.
Not to make any further design changes or anything of that. You and I have been through everything.
Correct.
Through many grinders over the last few years. So is that something that we should get clarified?
Yes, I think my understanding is these are operational meetings. They're just about to commence probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks. They're going to be held monthly, and I'm on one of those committees with other members of the LSC.
The LSC is required under the environmental assessment, which is different than these CLCs.
We've been asked by Metrolinx to be members of that committee, and we will be.
So the joint corridor, because
Correct.
And I'm going to ask staff, since those projects are only under RFQ, and the others are actually let, what the different roles of CLCs would be. As you and I know, Metrolinx has a lot of plans that
Yes.
somehow, sometimes don't actually come to fruition.
Through the joint corridor, Councillor Fletcher, we have, as you know, the GO expansion for
Yes.
electrification of on the extra track going in, plus the 2 Ontario line tracks. So
Exactly.
there is a combination of things happening here. Yeah.
Correct, but I just need to understand that the CLC is an environmental assessment requirement of the GO expansion, not of the environmental assessment of the Ontario. It seems to it's more Metrolinx is voluntarily putting together CLCs, or is it part of their environmental assessment requirement? Do you know?
I can't speak on their behalf, but my understanding is it's more than just the environmental assessment scenario. It's an ongoing construction, updating construction, what's happening on a monthly basis.
Which is different than the CLC and an environmental assessment.
Well,
Two different things.
They are two different things.
Yes.
I can't speak to the environmental. I can only speak to the ongoing construction project, which, as you know, is going to be going on for the next 10 plus years.
Correct, but we'll talk about it offline, because actually that's different than the CLCs, in my understanding of what they'll be once the work starts. Anyway, okay. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any other members have questions for Tony? Thank you very much, Tony, for your presentation. Our next speaker is online, and it's Sue Dexter. Sue, are you there?
Indeed, I am indeed.
Welcome
Good
to the
morning.
subcommittee. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thanks a lot.
When you're getting close to your time, I'll
Terrific.
let you know. Go ahead when you're ready.
Yes, good morning, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to depute. I'm here on behalf of the Harvard Village Residents Association. Our catchment is Bloor College, Spadina, and Bathurst. As residents of the downtown, our concerns are ensuring the process arises from full community engagement and that the city has the strongest possible negotiating position, if not the final word. The Ontario Line Osgood station sits at the terminus of a transformative public work, University Park, which emerged in 2019 from a 5-year process to create a new downtown official plan. The idea was simple. Let the west side of University carry the traffic, secure the east for park space and walkways, an 8.9-acre linear park full of trees, plantings, benches, public spaces, good for workers, for residents in nearby towers, for visitors to the hospital sectors, and folks from the downtown and further afield. To Councillor Moyes, Osgood is a station with a difference. It hosts a huge city centre park approved as part of Teal Core. You can Google Public Works and find the designs. They're really wonderful. Last fall, the Thunderbolt, the Metrolinx plans for the Osgood corner of Queen and University. They were shocking, giving community stakeholders the strong arm while destroying a group of mature trees in the Osgood garden and putting in jeopardy its heritage landscape. They landed without public input or process on the exact patch of ground of the already proposed but not yet fully realized University Park. It was not a great start. In a sense, the staff report before you defines the problem you face. At heart, this is a mammoth construction project, but a route going through the downtown needs more than a plan for mitigating construction impacts, street closures, and the like. We need designs for the public realm both during construction and afterwards. Issues run from heritage to urban design to the provision of adequate green space. As one example, the city should take the lead in ensuring remedial planting plans go beyond perfunctory stem-for-stem replacement. We need to redress the canopy loss we've already suffered and to ensure long-term viability and improve sustainability. And we cannot afford to lose sight of University Park. From what we've experienced at Osgood, leaving the initiative to the Metrolinx model of engagement does not serve the community's interest. A good consultation relies on transparency and openness from a developer. Fait accompli contact based on deficient information will not do. Since Metrolinx has shown little aptitude for such a process, then the city must step up. The Design Excellence Working Group model, by title, used already in Ward 14 sounds like it might be helpful for Osgood, which arguably has the most involved and sensitive streetscape along the length of the line. Stakeholders are ready to assist. Bold has presented an alternative design for consideration. We cannot risk giving it short shrift. Let's agree it's an engineering process here, it's a construction process. Over and above both, let's elevate this into an urban design and greening process that benefits residents and visitors alike. One with a vision that should be driven by the city. Going into the discussions, the city needs to have an agreed vision to put on the table, and it has the beginnings of a huge public park already underway that should not be sacrificed and that could strengthen our position entering the discussions. That's it for me.
Thank you very much, Sue. Are there any questions from members? All right, thank you very much for your presentation. Our next speaker is Diane Devenny from the Moss Park Coalition. Welcome to the subcommittee, Diane. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know. Please go ahead when you're ready.
I am here as a 10-year member of the Moss Park community and as a member of the Moss Park Coalition. And I'm also one of the ones who were selected to be on the local advisory group of the Moss Park redevelopment plan, which gives me a unique perspective into what has been happening in and around Moss Park. And I'd like to say I feel really excited about the possibility of looking holistically at what's going on. As a member of the local advisory group, I have seen how the remaining part of the park that's available once the station takes over a chunk of the park has made it very difficult for the park redesigners to fit all of the programming into the park that is desired by the community. And it's, the current plan also includes the destruction of 25 more mature trees in Moss Park at the northeast end of the park now to accommodate a different, bigger footprint of a new community center. And now that we have seen what it is like to have the trees removed, the trees destroyed, we are demanding that another plan be considered because we cannot lose one more tree in Moss Park. Now, this proposal is something that's still very new, and the coalition is very sensitive to including as many voices as possible from the local residents, and in particular those who reside in the Moss Park apartment community. It's been a challenge for us, but we have been doing some surveys, and we're also feeling that these are things that shouldn't be done by a group of volunteers when Metrolinx has an obligation to engage the community, and which it has failed to do. In the letter that I've submitted, I've outlined how little response we've had to and little interaction we've had from Metrolinx. Now that I hear from some of the other groups, I'm feeling that we are actually, having had 2 meetings and a walk through the park before they cut down all our trees, we seem to be faring well compared to others. But the fact is that there has been so little consultation. The repeated message is that it's just been an information session about what the plans have been rather than any true consultation. But now that we can see that there is an incredible opportunity to really look holistically at the area and to call on the federal government for support. And obviously you can't force them to do anything, but you can invite our local MP, who is a member of the ruling party in this country right now, to support us in really looking holistically. They have control over their payments to Metrolinx. And Metrolinx to date has failed to meet their obligations to truly consult. We have, now I will say, we are in the process of seeing if they will meet us tomorrow, but they still have failed to find a location. But we are, we're calling on all levels of government to come together, just as we're calling on all of the communities along the Bold Coalition to really, as Councillor Moyse has said now, how important it is for us to come together as a group and really support and envision what is possible for every single community along the line. Yes, each of our situations is unique, but it is possible if we come together. I'd like to just conclude by saying that in my letter, I've outlined some proposals, some of which have to do with the trees, and that can be within the city's purview because of the permits to be given for more tree destruction. And what has actually happened to them. We've been asking for proof. We've asked for arborist reports. We've never received anything. The other thing is to have the city look at how the desire for affordable housing that has been lost in our community recently to developers, how it could be creatively, holistically included in a new community center design that could happen in the Moss Park Apartments' largely unused parking lot. And so this is something that I've only thought about because of my unique position in two different projects, and that is why we're just coming up with it and moving forward as best we can, as expeditiously as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diane. Councillor Fletcher?
Good morning. Thank you for coming. Just want to know what your understanding is of Metrolinx's powers over city property, trees, property, roads, etc.
No, we're very aware of that. But we also know that...
Sorry, what is it?
Well, what we learned through the injunction attempts at Osgood was that they pretty much can take over whatever they want, and without this is the legal position. But the fact is, federally, there is the federal input of a substantial amount of money, and that includes true consultation with community and truly advancing community benefits in the projects that they do.
We've been trying for so long to get the federal government to take any interest in the Ontario line, so I wish you the best, because then we'll be able to go in your jet stream. But my understanding, and I think it's yours, is that at the end of the day, we can negotiate, but Metrolinx has the overall authority over city property in the city of Toronto.
Right.
Unfortunately and sadly, in every way, at the end of the day, would you agree that's just the way it is?
Well, I agree that is the law.
Yes.
I don't know that we can't find a way to...
We can always try.
Yeah.
But when they say we're going to take that down, well, we know that from all of our fights.
I watched every tree cut down in Moss Park.
We've had thousands of trees cut down in my area. Yeah. And so I want everybody to be clear that we can push, have ideas, ask for things, but at the end of the day, unfortunately, the way it's set up, I hear you, your understanding is yes, that they do have that ultimate ability to do what they would like.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll underscore that 10 times.
Any other questions from members? Councillor Moise, go ahead.
Councilor Malik, thank you. Just wanted to say thank you to the deputy for coming in, and thank you for her leadership on this particular issue. I know since I've been elected councillor, she's been front and center on this file in particular. So thank you again.
Thank you for being here.
I have a question very quickly. Thank you for raising the issue around federal funding agreements. Through your engagement, have you gotten a sense of what is in those?
Well, we do have a document that indicates that they are required to engage in community in a meaningful way and to give us an opportunity to speak with decision makers rather than the people with whom we generally have been communicating. And so we have been organizing a meeting with Marcy Ian, our MP, and hopefully that will come soon so that we can give her a reason to get involved.
That's helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Diane. Next, we have Perrin Leach, General Director of the Canadian Opera Company. Well, yes, well, welcome to the subcommittee. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close, we'll let you know. And please go ahead when you're ready.
Much less technical thing. The General Director of the Canadian Opera Company, we have the building that is immediately across from Osgood Gardens. I've watched in horror as the trees have been cut down, but also we have offices at 227 Front Street, and watched as that Queen and Sherbourne intersection and the devastation in that park as well. I'm a relatively new resident of Toronto. I've come from Houston in Texas, where the words urban planning are an oxymoron. So I'm bringing to you a different perspective on this, of an opportunity here for a city to really establish what is important to it. We continue to build condos, et cetera, at an alarming rate. There are no spaces for people to go into and live in there. You know, working for a performing arts organisation, it's very much about the holistic approach to people's well-being, and we would benefit hugely from University Park being established as a meeting place. But again, what are we trying to build in the future for this city? It's a wonderful, wonderful city, incredible people, but community is about people coming together, and urban parks allow that kind of community to happen. Of course, infrastructure is important. And again, in Houston, Texas, they don't have infrastructure. You drive everywhere. But infrastructure is incredibly important. But really, we have an opportunity at this point to look at how we do that to best serve the communities and bring people together. And, you know, in the pandemic, when we couldn't meet for a number of years, the one place that we eventually could meet was outdoors, parks, and to be able to commune together. So there are plans that have been laid down for University Park, which are very, very beneficial for the city. There are relatively small changes that Metrolinx would need to make to the plans in order to facilitate that urban park eventually becoming a reality. So I really I'm here to say, what are we trying to do as a city? Great cities have meeting places and have places of commune. Of course, you need to get people to those spaces, and urban infrastructure is important. But the reality of it is that these are relatively small changes, and the complete devastation and lack of real oversight and thought about how we plan our cities we're right in that moment at this point. And I can speak about many cities where I've lived in through my life, in which they regret making decisions that were expedient and practical, rather than actually looking at what they wanted to do as an end result of that, which is, of course, a city in which people go, oh yeah, it's great, we can meet in the park that night, then go to the theatre, or whatever. Queen Street is an absolute disaster and a blight on this city. we have an opportunity to make a part of it really beautiful and really, really usable. And then hopefully that then spreads down the rest of Queen Street. We shouldn't lose that opportunity. We have wonderful, there's more condominiums going to be built opposite the Four Seasons Centre. Where are those people going to go? Are they just going to go down into a subway and disappear off into other areas of the city? Or will they actually live in that community and breathe in that community? These are relatively small changes. The green environmental part of that needs to be supported. The University Park is a great idea and needs to be properly funded for that. We have an opportunity, and I could go on and on about that, but having lived in cities where they haven't taken those opportunities, I really urge us to stop and take that moment to go, how can we make this a better thing for the communities that we serve? Because ultimately, public transport is there to serve communities and make the life of a city easier to live in, but also give you a destination to get to places that you want to go to. And at this point in time, I would urge that Metrolinx listen to the communities along the entire line and don't continue this cultural vandalism of both nature and heritage buildings, which is happening along the Ontario line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Perrin. Any questions from members?
Yes, may I use the word vandalism that you brought here this morning?
You may use whichever word you like, Council Member.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you for introducing that into the conversation.
Any other questions from members? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Our next speaker is Nellie Young, and she's joining us online. Nellie, are you there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Welcome to the subcommittee, Nellie. You have 5 minutes to speak. When you're getting close to the end of your time, I'll let you know, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to depute on this important subject. My name is Nellie Oster Young. I live in Councillor Diane Sachs's ward, and I'm a member of Grange Community Association. I became involved in my community's repeated attempts to engage with Metrolinx when 11 mature trees in Osgoode Hall Garden were threatened. They no longer exist. Each tree felled will be replaced by 3. That's the promise Metrolinx makes. It's an empty promise when the replacement trees are spindly saplings, uncared for and left to die, as Metrolinx's track record demonstrates. This cannot be allowed to happen or to continue to happen. No public consultations have been held for Osgoode Station, and a CLC has still not been set up. Whenever that happens, hopefully soon, non-disclosure agreements should not be a required ticket of admission. The executive director of the Transit Expansion Division should report back to this subcommittee at least quarterly, not semi-annually. And I just want to say that I support all the excellent submissions that have already been made this morning. For now, Osgoode Garden is still a potentially green oasis, a tranquil refuge in the heart of this busy city, a city under siege from rampant development. But it's not too late to think outside the Metrolinx box. Modifications to the Metrolinx design were presented by Liz Driver and Steve Monroe earlier, and are very much supported by our community's vision for the Osgoode and Performing Arts plazas, with University Park further down the road. Most important from the perspective of transit and pedestrian flow, such a design will free up the northeast and southeast corners of Queen and University to allow for the crush of subway and streetcar riders to disperse along with rush hour pedestrian traffic. The result will be an iconic gathering place for the exploration and discovery of downtown. And an historic opportunity faces citizens of Toronto and our elected city council. By supporting this first step in the development of University Park, City Council can significantly open up the public realm in the center of the city and add to its healthy meaning, thereby lowering Toronto's carbon footprint, something we badly need. How welcome it will be after the decade-long upheaval we will be forced to endure with the construction of the Ontario line. Replacing the seriously underused median with a road for northbound traffic and transforming University Avenue's eastern flank with an expanded promenade will eventually serve legions of Torontonians, as well as visitors from the rest of Canada and around the globe. University Park will become a park promenade and walk that connects the center of Ontario justice to the seat of provincial government. These are the things that define a city, and I hope City Council will do all in its power to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nellie. Any questions from members for Nellie? Thank you very much for joining us today. Our next presenter is Catherine Naismith with the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario at ACO Toronto. And she's joining us online. Catherine, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And can you see me? I'm hitting my start video button without success, I think. Oh, well, you know what? I'm just going to talk to you because haven't got a whole lot of time. And if we get the video thing going, great. But I think it may be at your side. I'm here to speak from the Architectural Conservancy of Ontario, the Toronto branch. I'm also a board member of the William Campbell House Foundation. I spent a considerable amount of time in the last few weeks trying to keep the trees at Osgoode Hall, because it's a cultural landscape that is that just cannot be more significant. But if you go to the broader question of the Ontario line as it winds its way through the city, I've written in other places that it's as if the route was chosen to inflict the maximum damage on Toronto's heritage. We're concerned about, the impacts at Fort York, along Queen Street, where it's likely to affect all of the wonderful fine-grained, in the oldest street in the city, places where businesses and all those interesting things that happen in the city. The development pressure created by the Ontario line is going to be so massive. I can't see how any kind of heritage protection is going to be able to withstand the pressure. But from having said all that, I'm going to come back to the letter we wrote yesterday, which deals with the rather brilliant proposal from Liz Driver and Steve Monroe to modify the station at Osgoode to move the head house out into University Avenue. Now, you may or may not know, but University Avenue started its life as a park, and it was the whole area was, and initially you couldn't even drive a carriage across it. And gradually it became more and more of a grand boulevard. But returning half of it to a city park would be just restoring the city's heritage. And anything we can do to move that ahead, for all of the reasons that, the development pressure the city is under, just like we can't stress it enough at how valuable that is going to be. And many other people have said that, so I won't repeat it again. One of the genius ideas that moving the head house does is it allows you to make the transition from the subway out into the street, and to move the ceiling level of the subway station down to give enough soil depth to plant real trees. And one after another, people have talked about how important the trees are, and restoring the trees to Osgood is. And I was going to use the Goddard example, but Don Young beat me to it. So that's all I've got to say. Anything, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer, but we've got a lot of work to do along the whole length of that line. I mean, it could bring great transit, but it could wreck so much of what we value in the downtown.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Any questions for Catherine from members? I also want to note that Councillor Sachs has joined us.
Councillor Sachs is my councillor.
Councillor Moyes, any questions? Okay. Thank you very much, Catherine. Our next speaker is Waleed Kogali Ali, co-chair of the Bold Coalition, and joining us online. Are you there, Waleed?
I hope you can hear me. Thank you, Councillor Malik.
Welcome to the subcommittee. You have 5 minutes to speak. When you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you so much, Councillor Malik. So my name is Waleed Kogali Ali. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Bold Coalition alongside Les Driver, and I'm here to depute with regards to the affordable housing and agenda item that we're hoping the subcommittee will consider regarding Metrolinx Ontario Line construction. And what I want to do is share some good news. The many members of our community, specifically neighborhood associations, and through the Coalition of Equitable and Inclusive Development, have actually celebrated a recent win when the developers, certain developers withdrew their appeal against the City of Toronto affordable housing bylaw. The Bold Coalition is a citywide association of resident associations and civic groups concerned about the impact the Ontario Line and Metrolinx will have on the communities and neighborhoods adjacent to the new subway line. We're grateful that our City Council has decided to create a public forum to explore the challenges presented by Metrolinx Ontario Line construction. Through the subcommittee, Bold would like to raise the issue of affordable housing along the Ontario Line. We know that the staff update for the agenda provided by the Executive Director, Transit Expansion Division for today's subcommittee meeting does not reference affordable housing, a matter of urgent concern to the city. Bold requests that the next staff update address affordable housing and that it be provided within 2 months, not the semi-annual reporting recommended by city staff for agenda item TM 1.2. Metrolinx has an obligation. I want to remind everyone, Metrolinx has an obligation under its federal funding agreement to include affordable housing in its project scope as it builds the Ontario Line. To date, the Bold Coalition has yet to see any progress on affordable housing initiatives for Metrolinx. The provincial agency has yet to provide a strategy, a funding model, or an update on where and how the federal requirements are going to be met. A recent Ontario Line Tribunal order, which was just made earlier this year regarding OPA 558 that's focused on affordable housing policy citywide, defined affordable housing as the city's bylaw of no more than 30% of household income. I'm not going to get into the specifics of the order. It is attached to my submission, so please do review it. But the Bold Community Coalition, alongside the Coalition of Equitable and Inclusive Development, supports the definition of affordable housing now set by the OLT. We expect Metrolinx to comply with the OLT decision to support the city's definition for affordable housing as it develops plans for transit-oriented communities around each Ontario Line station. As Metrolinx takes over local planning responsibility around transit stations, and as the government are going to be along the subway corridor, Bold wants to know how affordable housing targets tied to Metrolinx federal funding are going to be achieved, and what definition of affordability will be used to realize these specific targets. The Ontario Land Tribunal's ruling sends a strong message to Metrolinx to not only deliver better transit to the city, but to do so in a way that also delivers affordable housing for the people of Toronto. Thank you so much for listening to my deputation. We hope that City Hall now has a metric to assess Metrolinx's progress in meeting its requirements for affordable housing, and BOLD would like to request staff input on how to make sure the requirements are met. Thank you for the opportunity to share BOLD's concerns and ideas about affordable housing with the subcommittee, and BOLD members will offer whatever support is needed to help get any recommendations that come from the subcommittee process to also be adopted by City Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Waleed. I'll start with Councillor Bravo with questions.
Thank you for your deputation. I have the question around affordable housing I have is, how do you understand the obligation around affordable housing? If you can describe any commitments that have been made by any level of government in relation to affordable housing along the Ontario line. And the third question is, where do you see the locus of accountability, let's just say, the place that is going to compel any obligations or commitments around affordable housing, if you have those answers, please.
Thank you, Councillor Bravo. Those are excellent questions. We don't have those details about how much affordable housing will be built across the Ontario line. That's my first point. We need transparency, we need accountability. We do know that there are federal, whenever those developments are made, there'll be contracts with specific obligations on how the community should keep. So that's going to be very, very critical, especially when it comes to the transit stations and where developments are going to be centered. When you're talking about how do we hold folks accountable, well, community benefit agreements, they have worked across communities across Canada, and they were actually put in place by Indigenous nations across Canada that wanted to make sure that community wealth was focused in the community. And we can look to those examples for accountability. The trilateral examples are agreements that are focused on not just development, but also investment in the people. And I think it's also important for us to think about social development plans in those communities. When developments come, we spend so much money and resources in building physical infrastructure, but we don't invest in the people. And it's critical that we do so to make sure that our communities are able to succeed and address forces of gentrification that will come naturally with assets increasing in value. And we need to end the commodification of housing. I believe housing is a basic human right, and there should be a pathway to home ownership for residents, so they're not uprooted from their community. So there are evidence-based solutions that we could explore to make sure that developments that are happening on the Ontario line, transit communities, as we like to call it, are developed in a way that does not leave the residents of the community out of the discussion, out of the co-development, and also make sure that there's a transparent and accountable mechanism to ensure that the community voices are satisfied, are met. Because when the developments are done, it's the residents of those communities that deal with the effects of the development.
Yeah, it sounds like you would like for the federal and provincial government and also municipal government to live up to statements around affordable housing, even if there isn't a mechanism to compel that, and maybe support for those from community up, community benefits processes that would seek to negotiate specific deliverables around benefits like affordable housing and other dimensions. So thank you. And the idea of social development plans is interesting, and You know them well from the Regent Park area, so I appreciate that. Thanks.
You're welcome, Councillor Bravo.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fletcher?
Yes, just around the development, my understanding, and I don't know, and I will have this clarified later, that the developments around the stations for the Ontario line are part of a transit-oriented community planning. Is that your understanding?
I believe that there are, that planning has happened, but the question is the involvement of the community, right? To make sure that when we are building affordable housing, that it's built with the expectations of the community. Some communities want modular housing. Some communities want rent to income housing. So the specific needs.
I think
that
my
are not
question is,
included.
that's not Metrolinx doing the planning for the affordable housing.
No.
It is actually part of a transit-oriented community planning regimen, of which there are none that I know. There may be one or two. And is it your understanding, because it's mine, that it's in IO, it's Infrastructure Ontario, that's leading on transit-oriented communities? And so far, they have not put anything for affordable housing as a requirement in any of the transit-oriented communities that they're planning.
That's
That
an
would be the
excellent
provincial
point,
government.
Councillor Fletcher.
Pardon?
Yes, that's an excellent point, Councillor Fletcher. Our provincial government has failed in making that requirement through Infrastructure Ontario. And that's some work that needs to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Moyes, do you have questions?
Yeah, it's a quick question to Walid. Thank you for coming in, Walid. Have you spoken to Infrastructure Ontario or Metrolinx about your housing strategy?
That's an excellent question. We have reached out to Metrolinx Council to talk about affordable housing and many other needs, especially the critical need for public green spaces, where we just survived a pandemic. Mental health is at a crisis point if you look at all the data. So we've made those requests, and the response has been nothing, Councillor Moyes. And that's the problem, is we have a provincial government that is not responding to the needs of community members who have taken the time to organize and meet and consult with each other about their future, especially when it pertains to development. We don't want irresponsible development. We want development that's centered on the people, on our needs, and Metrolinx is not listening, unfortunately, Councillor Moyes.
Okay, well, we'll keep pressing it along. Thank you, Walid.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Moyes. Thank you, Walid, for your presentation. Next speaker is Andre Berman with the Corktown Residents and Business Association. Welcome to the subcommittee, Andre. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting to the end of your time, I'll let you know. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. Dear councillors and city staff, my name is Andre Berman, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Corktown Residents and Business Association, the CRBA. The CRBA is a volunteer-based community group representing varied interests in the Corktown community of downtown Toronto since 1995. The CRBA, along with its neighboring community groups, have had extensive conversations with Metrolinx and its Crown Corporation partner Infrastructure Ontario with regards to the planning and construction of the Corktown station and its transit-oriented community. Like most residents of the downtown east, we were shocked to hear that the decades-long process of commemorating the first Parliament site would take a backseat priority to the construction of developer-friendly high-rise condo towers to which any commitments of affordable housing has been non-existent. But I digress. It is our hope that this subcommittee will establish the role of the city and how it plans to play a role in the community's effort to bring about more accountability and transparency to Metrolinx. As you have heard from other stakeholder groups, communication from the provincial transit agency has largely been one-sided, leaving residents and businesses in constant flux about what is going on and when things will happen. Part of the problem, again, which has already been mentioned tonight, is the lack of standardization of the meeting and now the new CLC process. Again, I'll sort of spare my grocery list of grievances there since it's already been pointed out, but I will mention one thing that can be improved and applied where possible, and that is a clear and concise terms of reference for these CLC meetings. A document that can outline the roles and responsibilities, measures of accountability, including who and from what organization and department people represent, etc., would be key to formalizing these CLC meetings and bring a level of consistency and continuity to dialogue. This effort to bring about a terms of reference should be shouldered by the city, who has the wherewithal and the authority to advocate on our behalf for a level playing field forum with an organization like Metrolinx. Yes, we do understand the cold hard truth. The province can just do what it wants. However, we can't let this breed bad policy and decision-making from our local government. If we're just going to throw our hands up in the air, then what's the point of having this subcommittee? The agenda item on this background report submitted by the Executive Director of the Transit Expansion Division, Mr. Derek Toigo, is he here today? He's left? Well, I just wanted to congratulate him. It's an amazing report. And I don't think our city staff give enough credit for these background reports. It's a great resource for the public that puts together the required context, timelines, and known committee issues all in one read, which has also been a part of the problem with this process is just there's too many staff reports from so many divisions, from so many agenda items, from different committees. It's not all put into one report. This was an excellent job on Mr. Toigo's, for his efforts, and I just want to recognize that. Again, I'll just conclude that the CRBA looks forward to participating in this forum as we navigate through this tumultuous era of the Ontario Line construction together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. Are there questions? Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you for recognizing the work in the report. I also felt it was great. And also for Councillor Malik for taking the lead to putting a subcommittee together and bringing us all along where we have jurisdiction in Toronto and East York. But I'm quite interested because I do have this TOC process starting at Gerrard and Carlaw around that station. And despite many times asking about the affordable housing component, it's with Loblaws, it's with Choice REIT because they own the plaza. I've gotten the answer that there is no requirement and there is no affordable housing despite the thousands of units that are up. And so are you finding that the station part and the transit part is definitely Metrolinx making all of those decisions, but now you've got IO on top of that, and that twain doesn't necessarily meet either. So the instance, I'd be interested, sorry for such a long question, but right now we're doing a study for the transit-oriented community at Riverdale Plaza at Gerrard and Carlaw, but none of it could ever be built until all of the Metrolinx work's done. So I think, do you think it's fair that this public's being asked to develop a plan that could not even be started for 10 years from when it would be passed? That's a bit odd. Is that the same circumstance you're finding as far as the actual implementation of your transit-oriented community, or is it going to be built at the same time as the station?
No, well, for Corktown Station, much of it was already owned by the public. By the city, actually. It was a very complicated land swapping process that took decades to acquire the first Parliament site.
I know.
And if had the city built up that land, maybe we wouldn't be having this problem. But again, no, that's a whole separate issue. But yes, the station, from our knowledge, the station has to be built, and then the transit-oriented community can be built on top. The other issue is that the province is going to be spending taxpayer money to build the infrastructure, and then they're just going to sell the land to a private developer, likely pennies on the dollar. So that's the other issue here too. And again, I think there needs to be a lot more discussion on that. And there's another TOC site, I believe, in your ward, Councillor, and that's East Harbour.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Cadillac Fairview. I mean, that's a whole other,
That's
a massive development. And I'm surprised no one here is talking about it tonight, because that's a huge, probably the biggest TOC site. And not only that, but they're building basically a Union Station of the East there, because it's going to connect. It's a huge hub. Again, I mean, I don't know what the city or the province is doing for Cadillac Fairview, but that was a giveaway on that land. And the fact that what they're doing there is, anyways,
just
neither here nor there.
just to follow up for you on the number one, that's why the station isn't underground. That's why the line isn't underground, in order to meet the requirements of Cadillac Fairview for an at-grade station, just FYI, which the original plan was to have an underground section, not an above-ground 2-kilometer section. But for your TOC, if you don't mind just drilling down a little bit, from the time they finish the station and the actual transit component, how long is that taking before any development would take place? So in other words, you're planning a community that won't even be built for a good number of years. How many years is it that they're forecasting before any buildings would be there or any housing would be there?
What I believe the timeline is for completion is 2031.
For the Ontario line?
For the Ontario
or
line.
for the-
No, for the Ontario line, and then
And then on top of that,
we don't know. Well, I'm not aware of what the current timeline is for that, but we can assume it's probably another 5 years to build. They have at least half a dozen high-rise condominiums planned for the Corktown station.
so generally in Toronto, do you think things are planned out 10 years ahead before they're actually a shovel in the ground, or this is just a bit of an
No.
exercise?
I think the last bit of foresight that ever happened in the city was when they built the Bloor Danforth Viaduct.
Yes, that was.
About 100 years ago. That was. I think it was only a bit of foresight when they put the undercarriage for the subway, but that since then, I don't know. Give me another example.
I appreciate understanding what's happening with the TOC and IO and from today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Any other questions from members? Councillor Moyes?
Just a quick thank you to Andre. Again, a great community leader who does a lot of things in my ward, and very much appreciate it.
Is Mr. Toigo here? I made a comment earlier congratulating you on the efforts on that report that you put out for, I'm sure you don't get enough credit from the public from the reports that you guys do. And I just wanted to recognize that effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's not just my report, it's a report that's with my colleagues in the other divisions as well.
Thank you.
Very much, Andre. Our next speaker is Stuart Linton, President of the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association, who's joining us online. Stuart, are you there?
Good morning, testing, 1, 2.
Yes, we can hear you, and welcome to the subcommittee. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, I'll let you know, and please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, city staff, and guests. My name is Stuart Linton. I am president of the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association. To orient you, the St. Lawrence neighborhood extends from Yonge to Parliament and from Queen to the rail corridor to the south. It is home to over 35,000 residents, a number which continues to grow, with new residential buildings recently completed, under construction, or approved. This neighborhood will be significantly affected by the construction of the Ontario line and the transit-oriented community which will follow right along behind it. The disruption could extend over an estimated 15-year period. The St. Lawrence neighborhood includes the site of the so far placeholder named Corktown Station at the First Parliament site and the proposed TOC there, and it is adjacent to the sites of both the Moss Park and Queen Street stations along Queen Street, the neighborhood's northern border. The following remarks are structured around 3 specific points. First, the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Association is in full support of the objectives of this subcommittee. Both Metrolinx and Infrastructure Ontario have shown by evidence that they behave very differently from the more typical development and public works actors with which the city and the community are most familiar. Both have proven to be reluctant participants, so far at least, in consultative processes pertaining to the Ontario line and its related TOC developments, whether hosted by themselves or by the city. That is not to say that no progress has been made by city and community voices in discussions with Metrolinx and IO. However, there is room for more, and it is hoped that this subcommittee will spearhead these efforts. Second, the subcommittee through council must endeavor to provide staff with the strongest negotiating positions and mandates possible in their ongoing discussions with Metrolinx on the myriad details which are integral to the construction process. Further, the subcommittee has the opportunity to ensure to the maximum extent possible that community voices are engaged and heard throughout. SLNA encourages this subcommittee to insist that city staff make the best possible use of both the expertise that exists within the various communities affected by Ontario Line construction, some of which expertise we have heard this morning, and the views of the residents of those communities. Finally, SLNA acknowledges that the disruption related to the construction of the Ontario Line will extend well beyond the term of this council. Where possible and where relevant, the association respectfully requests that this subcommittee expand its scope to include activity relating to the surrounding residential and commercial developments that may occur in parallel with Metrolinx activities during the subcommittee's tenure. In particular, I want to ask the subcommittee for its full support of the community's ongoing discussions with the Transit Expansion Office on the future of the First Parliament site. These discussions have been collaborative and constructive, and while there is some way to go and some hurdles yet to overcome, your support will be invaluable in helping to achieve the best possible result, one which respects the principles of the First Parliament Master Plan while recognizing the reality of the TOC to be built there. So in summary, 5 bullet points. 1, St. Lawrence neighborhood fully supports the objectives of this subcommittee and is prepared to work closely with staff and subcommittee members to create outcomes which respect the neighborhoods affected and of which local residents and indeed the entire city can be proud. 2, the subcommittee through council should endeavor to equip staff with as strong a negotiating position as possible on all relevant issues, along with the tools and authority to push hard for city and community priorities throughout the Ontario Line construction phase. 3, it should require that staff continue to engage with the communities affected by Ontario Line construction to ensure that community expertise and community priorities are considered throughout the process. 4, the subcommittee should maintain a watching brief on those residential and commercial developments that surround the Ontario Line stations in order that it may comment on any movement that occurs in parallel with Metrolinx construction activities. And finally, 5, SLNA requests the subcommittee's full support for the ongoing cooperative effort between the community, the Transit Expansion Office, and other city staff to reimagine the First Parliament site in a manner which respects the principles of the First Parliament Master Plan while acknowledging the reality of the transit-oriented community to be built there. Thank you for your attention and for your consideration of this input.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Perfect timing. Any questions for Stuart?
I just have one question that I'm just not sure that this committee is set up to deal with the TOCs, and that's probably more at the planning side. Have you thought about that? Because
yes, and I'm
this is a Metrolinx
conscious of.
Sorry.
I understand that, and I'm conscious of the time interval between for the construction of the tunneling and the stations themselves, and so it is unlikely, I think, that much will happen in parallel. But for example, some of the sales could be made of the land to developer or devcos in the process, and I think if not in this subcommittee, then somewhere in this group of councilors for sure, we need to try and provide a way to engage with Infrastructure Ontario and the ultimate developer, should that happen in the timeline that we're talking about.
Would you agree it might be useful to have, coming not to this subcommittee, this is particularly, I don't think it's within the purview of this subcommittee, but we can let the clerk answer, but to have a presentation at Toronto and East York Community Council around transit-oriented communities, I think that would be very helpful for us all at some point, just as we had the night economy recently. So I'll undertake to make sure that that is laid out so we understand completely who's doing what around TOCs and what the planning department's doing and what options we have. So thanks for raising that today, Stuart.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Stuart. Our next speaker is Chris Glover, Member of Provincial Parliament for Spadina, Fort York. Welcome to the subcommittee, Chris. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know, and please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor Malik. And I want to thank Councillors Malik, Moyes, and Fletcher for organizing this subcommittee. And I also want to thank Councillor Bravo and Councillor Sachs for your interest and attendance today. I actually came here on behalf of my colleagues, MPP Peter Tabbins and MPP Kristen Wong-Tam, mostly to listen. And so I'm actually kind of glad that I'm near the end of the speakers list, because I really appreciate all of the input and all of the insights from all of the speakers so far today. And my goal is to take your voices to Queen's Park and to demand some answers. And there's a couple of things I just want to highlight that I heard this morning. You know, a couple of terms that I heard from Karen Leach, from the Canadian Opera Company. That term, cultural vandalism, I'm going to be using that. I just want Karen to know that I'm going to be using that term. And also that in East Texas, city planning is an oxymoron. I'm afraid that under the current government in Ontario, city planning is an oxymoron, and it's something that we really need to address. I also want to, thank Steve Monroe and Liz Driver for your proposal around the University Park. That's something that I'm very interested in, and I'd love to have a meeting with you to learn more about it and see if we can take that to Queen's Park as well. And I want to thank all of the neighborhood associations and all of the individuals who've come here to speak today. Let's see, my colleagues and I have been meeting with BIAs and community groups and neighborhood associations, and we're open to more meetings. So if you are interested in meeting with us, please just reach out to our offices. And I've listed our concerns under 4 categories. We're concerned about the actual construction, the noise and disruption. What will the construction sites look like? Will they be well maintained? And we need to hold Metrolinx accountable for the upkeep of these sites. And the other question is, will Metrolinx take down more trees and without adequate public consultation and notices to offices? Our second concern is around the impact on businesses. Will this project be delivered on time and on budget? And will it compensate businesses for their losses and provide a marketing campaign that will help to mitigate some of the business losses during construction? And also compensation. We need to have a conversation about compensation for local businesses, because what's been proposed by Metrolinx to this point is completely inadequate. We're also concerned about the real estate development. Metrolinx has expropriated properties on and near the site of the Ontario Line stations, and I've not seen any evidence of plans for affordable housing, and the expropriation is happening without respecting city planning, and there are no guarantees. In fact, the province has taken measures that mitigate the ability of this city to actually provide all of the things that you need in a high-rise community, the parks, the children's centers, the schools, all of those community amenities that make it a livable community. And I live down in Fort York, and I can say when I moved in a number of years ago to that area, I was really wondering whether I would enjoy condo living. I love it, and I love it because of the incredible planning that's happened along the waterfront, and that this city, has been a part of. And I'm concerned about the kind of planning that's happening through transit-oriented communities. So, let's see, I don't have too much more time, but I want to say that the Ontario NDP is calling for the same goals that the community is asking for, and this is accountability and transparency from Metrolinx. We want to mitigate community and business impacts, and we want to make sure that this project gets back on time and on budget. Metrolinx's practices to date and the legislative framework created by the Ford government make these goals difficult to achieve. On the Ontario Line consultations, the public consultations were held, but community members who wanted to participate had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, which really violates the very purpose of community consultation. The office, we've also recently learned that the Office of the Minister of Transportation instructed Metrolinx not to inform MPP Tabbins and MPP Wong Tam of tree removal plans and exclude from the notice the estimated number of trees that would be taken down. And this undermines confidence in Metrolinx and undermines the role of the MPP to represent our communities. We're also deeply concerned about the example of the Eglinton Crosstown. It's now more than double budget, and the most recent completion date that we've heard about is 2031. And it's having a devastating impact on local businesses along Eglinton. We've got to make sure that those mistakes are not repeated with the Ontario Line coming across Queen Street and down into Exhibition. So I was going to go into the legislative framework. I won't. I'll just conclude, because I am out of time, that this committee will help us achieve accountability and transparency from Metrolinx. We want to mitigate the community and business impacts and to increase transparency and accountability to get this project on time. And we are setting up, I will also say that we are setting up the MPPs, we are setting up working groups with Metrolinx so that we can get information and provide feedback to Metrolinx staff.
Thank you. Questions for Chris? Please go ahead.
Eglinton is of great concern to Davenport. You mentioned that you have heard of a completion date, or can you comment on that a bit more?
Yeah, I can provide the reference, but I've got it in my notes.
Okay, thank you.
So
that is really disturbing for the use of these public-private partnerships.
Yes.
And the result in terms of public oversight, the governance of the contracts, and the lack of information that affected communities are able to receive, including through their elected representatives. So thanks for that. I'll follow up with you.
Yeah. Okay. No, and I just want to share that we're deeply concerned about P3 projects. P3 projects, the Auditor General has said that they go, the average is 30% additional cost, and we lose control of the project, which is what has happened at Eglinton. In fact, so far as we can see, there's no work going on in Eglinton right now, which is a deep concern.
So in terms, I know that you ran out of time, but I appreciate you raising the question of the legislative framework to govern how expansion happens, and something that's deeply flawed is, I think, having planning on us of transit that's supposed to be serving us without us, and this is a theme we've heard all day, so thanks for that.
Can I just add to that too? Like, we, the taxpayers, are on the hook for what is estimated to be probably $20 billion for the construction of the Ontario Line, and we are also going to be, dealing with the noise and the disruption, the traffic disruptions, and it's absolutely inherent. Like, the Metrolinx has a responsibility to work with the communities and to work with the City Council to mitigate those impacts and to also get this project back on track and back on budget.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bravo. Any other questions for Chris?
Just to ask it, does Metrolinx meet with you? They agree to meet with you?
I have met with them, yes, and we've got more meetings that we're setting up.
Do you meet with Phil Verster, or?
Sorry?
Do you meet with the CEO?
I have met with him. Yeah. It's not an ongoing. He's not the usual person that I meet.
Does he make himself available to meetings with MPPs who have the Ontario Line in their area?
I'd have to consult also with Kristen, or MPP Wong Tam and MPP Tabbins. I know they've been having meetings as well, but I'm not sure if it's with the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Moyes, do you have any questions?
Actually, Councillor Fletcher actually did ask my questions. So thank you, NDP Glover, for coming in today.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay, thank you for having me.
Our next speaker is Rosemary Powell, Executive Director of the Toronto Community Benefits Network, and she's joining us online. Rosemary, are you there?
I am. Can you see me?
Yes, we can. And welcome to the subcommittee. 5 minutes to speak.
Well, thank you very much.
And when you're getting close to the end of your time, I'll let you know. And please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to depute. My name is Rosemary Powell, Executive Director. I'm sorry. Executive Director of the Toronto Community Benefits Network. We're a community labor coalition of 120 member organizations and groups, including 12 construction unions, working to ensure equitable representation in employment and economic opportunities for Black, Indigenous, and other racialized groups in construction, before, during, and after construction. At this very moment, TCBN is holding a virtual career fair with construction employers who are trying to meet their community benefits targets. And this doesn't happen just by wishing it into being. It takes an agreement matched with an intentional implementation plan. Construction of the southern civil stations and tunnels and rolling stock systems, operations, and maintenance components of the Ontario line is set to begin later this year. And TCBN is very concerned with the absence of a robust and prescriptive community benefits agreements in the contracts. While the Ontario line is expected to generate thousands of jobs and career opportunities, the local communities most impacted by the construction of the project must not be left out. In May 2022, after significant community pushback on the lack of a CBA and minimum equity hiring thresholds on Toronto's 4 new transit projects, Metrolinx CEO Phil Verster and the Ministry of Transportation committed to partnering with the Ministry of Labor to facilitate a pathway for local residents and youth to find employment on the 4 major transit projects. In addition, the federal government has identified a community benefits agreement as a condition to funding for the 4 new transit projects included in the Ontario line. Locally, the City of Toronto's community benefits framework highlights the need for formalized and enforceable agreements, recognizing the role that community benefits play to secure local benefits for new infrastructure projects. The potential to support the city's recovery efforts from COVID-19, which have had a disproportionate impact on women, Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities, and the need for equitable workforce development in the face of looming labor shortages in the building trades. While all the relevant stakeholders seem to have reached a consensus that community benefits are needed, the lack of any formal agreement is very puzzling. The City of Toronto's research speaks to the tremendous work it takes to successfully implement a CBA, and that the potential impact of a CBA can be severely limited when it is left to the last minute. The TCBN is seeking the assistance of the Ontario Line Subcommittee and the City of Toronto in securing a CBA for the Ontario Line project, and commitments to direct city resources towards working with Metrolinx to support the implementation of these agreements to maximize their potential. Through our work in securing and implementing CBAs in Toronto, including the Eglinton Crosstown LRT and the Finch West LRT with Metrolinx, we have identified key elements of successful CBAs that must be included as part of this project. First, agreements must include the minimum requirement for 10% of all trade or craft working hours to be performed by apprentices or journey persons who identify as Black, Indigenous, and/or people of color, and 10% of all trade or craft working hours to be performed by apprentices or journey persons who identify as women. Secondly, professional, administrative, and technical opportunities for persons who identify as women, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Thirdly, to establish a project-level community benefits working group that meets quarterly and includes the project contractor, Metrolinx, Infrastructure Ontario, provincial ministries, labor and community representatives, including the Toronto Community Benefits Network, to monitor and oversee the implementation and public reporting of the outcomes. Fourth, creation and public reporting of an apprenticeship and workforce development plan, a community benefits liaison plan, and a tracking, monitoring, and evaluation framework. Fifth, a dedicated community benefits liaison staff or team to support local community engagement, outreach, and to support CBA implementation. 6, requirements for contractors to develop, implement, and report on an anti-racism strategy that includes training for all workers. And 7, social procurement opportunities, ensuring project companies prioritize procurement of goods and services from local businesses, social enterprises, and diverse-owned businesses. This project will have a significant impact on local communities, but the nature of the impact will be dependent on the existence of a robust community benefits agreement to ensure that local residents from equity-seeking groups are able to share in the wealth created by the project. And so we recognize the City of Toronto's continued efforts to ensure a CBA is included on the Ontario Line project. There was a motion that was passed April 2022, and we do look forward to support of this committee, City Council, and staff in securing a community benefits agreement for the Ontario Line project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosemary. Any questions? Councillor Bravo?
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your work. I just note that it was in April of 2014, as if I recall, that Metrolinx made a commitment to the Toronto Community Benefits Network, signed in a community benefits framework agreement, that we would not need to be negotiating project by project, but that 10% of construction hours would go to pre-apprentices and apprentices from communities underrepresented in the construction industry, including women and racialized workers. Is that correct?
That is correct, Councillor Bravo. And it's truly unfortunate because what we saw in 2022 and why we had to do this pushback at all levels of government at the time was because Metrolinx tried to actually renege on that commitment after having successfully implemented community benefits agreement on the Eglinton Crosstown LRT and the Finch West LRT. They thought it prudent to do things differently. And for us, that was really a setback because all the work that everyone had put together. You can see the tremendous work that it takes from different stakeholders to be able to coordinate an implementation plan. We need all stakeholders on board, and we need to see that commitment reinforced.
It's also, there was a momentary reneging as well on lands at Jane and Finch, I recall, as promised for a community hub that TCBN and the broader community in Toronto fought back on. So I think there's a bit of a pattern here. I guess the question I have is how the federal commitment, which I know was made some years ago to require for community benefits to go in the form of construction hours to ensure access to the trades for underrepresented communities. How has that proceeded? Because while there isn't any, I don't see any contractual mechanism right now in place, what have you heard from the federal government around this?
Well, we have, we've reached out, we've sent letters, we've held meetings even with Metrolinx, and we understand that Metrolinx is going to be implementing across the board a process whereby community benefits will be achieved on the projects. However, we haven't seen anything in writing. And if it isn't in writing, we are concerned that is absolutely not happening. And not only that, by the time we had pushed back and recognized what was happening after the federal government had made that commitment, the request for proposals had already gone out for the initial contracts. And there's a $12 billion project that was signed that didn't include the requirement for community benefits. And what Metrolinx has said is that they will retroactively go back to the selected project co and to negotiate that. But we know how hard that is. We've had that experience before with the Eglinton Crosstown, that trying to go back after you've already signed the agreement to negotiate new requirements, it's just a really, really difficult undertaking. And if we don't see the general contractors really coming forward and Metrolinx holding them accountable to this, we're really concerned that it won't happen. So we don't see any contracts in place, we don't see the language, and we really need the support of the city to be able to help advance those conversations and to, like you've done with the Casino Woodbine, for example, establish a formal community benefits agreement on the project.
Thank you so much for bringing this forward, because this is a promise that's been made for 9 years. There's a framework agreement signed with Metrolinx. The federal government has repeatedly extolled its own commitments around access to the trades, and clearly the language not going out in the RFP is of huge concern. Thank you for bringing this forward. We'll have more questions later.
Thank you, Councilor Bravo.
Councilor Fletcher?
Yeah, I'll just ask because of the contracts that are, the ones that are let already, and I'll be asking staff about the contracts and the status of the RFQs, and if there's any notes in the RFQs about community benefits for the ones that are upcoming, because there are 2 RFQs out now, North Pape Tunnel and Underground Stations contract, and the second is North Elevated Guideway and Stations contract. Are you aware if there's anything in the RFQ that would acknowledge the framework agreement that Metrolinx has approved for community benefits on either of these contracts? Sorry, can you hear me, Ms. Powell? I don't think something's happened here.
Yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that. So no, we're not aware of the language. We haven't seen the language in any requests for proposals, and
no, it's
it would be
RFQs.
really helpful with the access that the city has. The RFQs, yes, it would be helpful. With the request, so we have not seen it, the language.
I don't know, I'll ask where it's posted so we can all see it. And the RFPs previously for Southern Civil Stations and Tunnel, which is really all of the building side, in that RFQ, I don't think there was anything in there acknowledging the framework. So those are already let, and what you're saying is you could go back and try to get it inserted, but you've tried that before and it's very difficult.
Very, very difficult to do, almost impossible.
So the 2 that are possible are the 2 upcoming ones. You've read the report, page 6, the 4 contracts, the 2 upcoming, North Pape Tunnel and Underground Stations contract, and North Elevated Guideway and Stations contract, correct?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Good, so I'll ask about those and the status of those today, if staff know anything about that.
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Fletcher. Councilor Moyes, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions, but thank you, Rosemary, for coming in.
I just have a quick question for Rosemary. Do you meet with Metrolinx, or have they met with you, responded to requests to come to the table?
So we have met with Metrolinx at least once this year, and last year as well. And what we've received, I believe, perhaps 2 separate letters. One initially confirming that they will go ahead and include not just the 10% equity hiring, but they'll also include 10% for women as well. And the second one was an update describing their new internal community benefits pillars that they're implementing. And they have said that they will include these requirements on the projects. The challenge that we have is that we do not see that actually reflected in the request for qualifications or the request for proposals.
So saying and doing are 2 different things.
Saying and doing is 2 different things, exactly.
Thank you so much, Rosemary. Any other questions? I think, thank you very much for your presentation and for joining us today. Our next speaker is Max Allen. I believe you're in the room, Max. Welcome to the subcommittee, Max. You have 5 minutes to speak. When you're getting close to the end of your time, I will let you know, and please go ahead when you're ready.
The preceding interchange was horrifying about the RFQ and the RFP. And I would like to start by saying I want to give Councillor Fletcher a metaphorical hug, because we've been through this same despair-causing situation that you have. Dealing with Metrolinx is very difficult. But I think it's not impossible, because we have an example in the Grange community area and centered around Campbell House of a successful negotiation with Metrolinx. I can give you some details of it, but never mind. I want you to know that it's difficult but possible. The purpose of this committee, I think, is to ask staff some more questions. And I, in our written submission from the Grange Community Association and from me personally, make some suggestions about what questions should be asked and what should be thought about. I don't have any suggestions about conclusions that the subcommittee should reach, but I do have, and I've put in the letter, some suggestions about what procedures you should follow. I want you to know that the Ontario Land Tribunal, a week ago Monday, issued a decision on a case on Bloor Street West that was not just about that case. It's a medium-sized mixed-use building, but it was in fact a declaration of policy on the part of the Land Tribunal. And I've referred to it in my letter, and I hope you'll read it. It's 14 pages, and it represents a declaration of war. It's not clear to me who that declaration of war is aimed at. When I first read it, I thought it was aimed at us, that is, the citizens of Toronto. But it may just be aimed at the province. So please have a look at it, at least. I think it's the most important document out of the planning tribunal, whatever it's called, of the province that I've ever seen. Now, the citizens, that is the neighborhood groups, the business groups, all of the people of Toronto are depending on you, and by you I mean the subcommittee and the Toronto and East York Community Council and City Council. We are depending on you to solve some problems. Problems that we as individual groups or collectively as groups cannot solve ourselves. Please be aware of the fact that you can't say it's not our job, or Metrolinx or the province has all the power. Don't say that. I can't stand to hear it. It may be partially true, but one of the previous speakers said, you got more, in not these words, you got more power than you think you do. And in this room, with the staff, who have been entirely silent, except for one comment. The staff and the counselors who are here, you could get together and solve all of these problems. We know what some of the answers are, and we know what some of the procedures are. Don't give up. The rest of us depend on you. In the 4 seconds I have left, let me tell you that in the 4 injunctions that we tried to get the trees not cut down, I learned a new phrase that's, since I don't appear in courts very often, but instead of tribunals, I learned the phrase self-help, which Metrolinx's lawyer kept using. And they said the indigenous groups were resorting to self-help because we can't use the word civil disobedience anymore, but that's what it means. And that's the next step. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Max. Any questions from?
I just wanted, the staff haven't spoken because it's not their time yet. It's not because they don't have a lot to say, I'm pretty sure. It's our time to ask questions. It's not their time, as you well know, Max.
I know.
Yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to call the attention to the fact that there are a dozen very
Yes, we know,
smart
they're all
people.
here and they're all great, and we're going to ask them questions when we're done with the deputations.
Indeed.
Good, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Paula.
And who was the lawyer for Metrolinx, by the way? I'm quite interested who their lawyer is.
Did anybody watch any of the
No.
court proceedings?
Do you know their lawyer? Which firm was that?
Oh, yes, it was McCarthy's, and she was
Okay.
very good.
Thank you.
I've said if we're ever really in trouble, we better hire her, although she was the enemy in this case. She was terrific.
Okay.
I was scared to death of her during the whole thing.
We'll take
Her name
note.
is Ben.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Max. Okay. Our next speaker is Paula Davies, and she's joining us online. Paula, are you there? Paula Davies. Hi, Paula.
Hello,
Welcome
can you
to
hear
the
me?
subcommittee. Yes, we can hear you. You have 5 minutes to speak, and when you're getting close to the end of your time, I'll let you know. And please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the councillors who started this subcommittee, and I'm blown away by the eloquence and interest of all the people. My interests are in the natural environment, so I wanted just to talk about the impacts to natural areas of the construction of bridges, a train yard, and tree cutting between the Science Centre and Minton Place in the northern part. So I'm wondering, you know, yes, they have all the power. They've already started to cut things down in a local spur ravine. So I know they have all that power. So I'm looking to the future to see how can we leave something better. So what exactly are the details and the current plan for this area? All I've received is a map showing the 3 bridges, very coarse. And of course, Metrolinx communicates so poorly with communities. The tree removals in remnant native forest areas for the northern section of the Ontario line are just the tip of the iceberg for the ecologically destructive construction that's taking place. There are 3 bridges crossing natural areas of the Don River and the Walmsley Brook tributary that require removal of sugar maples, oaks, shagbark hickories, basswoods, and more, and they are quite healthy, contrary to what we've read about some being unhealthy or not great. And you know, not to mention that there's also the ground level trout lilies, trilliums. This is remnant forest. We're trying to protect them through designating them as environmentally significant areas, and much of the overpass that overly will run through forest that has this type of community. It seems like the natural environment, of which we have so little left in the city and which has obviously become so important since the pandemic, is always the recipient of the negative impacts of human decisions. And we can't seem to create a win-win. But they achieved that with the Herb Gray Parkway in Windsor. And I urge you to look up the Pinewood Studios video about that structure. They got a net gain in the environment. Why can't we have that standard? I have many questions, but these are some issues for which I would like information. What's going to happen after all the construction is created? Number one, Metrolinx says they will plant and say they'll plant 3 trees for each one cut down. Of course, when you look into the details, what kind of trees? Will they be species native to Toronto? Will they be from our Toronto seed zone? Or will they be sourced from, say, Kentucky? Some people think that planting a big tree in place of the remnant trees that were removed is a good idea, but caliper trees don't always survive that well. Will it be only trees, or will there be shrubs and an herb layer planted? Who's going to do the planting? The construction contractor? Construction planters are notoriously poor at it, not their expertise. Number 4, are there arborists or biologists or ecologists involved in advising these decisions? Number 5, in what condition will the soil be left? Will they pack the soil so nothing will grow properly? Doesn't matter what size of tree you put in, they won't grow when they're in compacted soil. Number 6, the train yard. How will the dirty water produced from cleaning trains and other polluting material be prevented from entering the water in the Walmsley tributary and then subsequently drained to the Don River? Number 7, what is the exact plan in this vicinity for Walmsley Brook? Is it intended that all or part of this spur ravine will be filled in? It has native plants in there. There were recent plantings because of the concrete factory, and they had to redo some plantings down there. And it's full of frogs and other wildlife. Number 8, what kind of staging area will be needed for these bridges in the construction area? How large will it be? And what will the construction zone impact? Staging areas are typically much larger than necessary, but adjacent to natural areas should be made smaller or located in an existing disturbed area, like a works yard or a roadway near the site. As we can see here, built and natural heritage are ruined with this poor planning by Metrolinx. And I hope that some of our city departments, I know they're like forestry is in there trying hard to make sure that the outcome of this planning will have some influence from the city. And I hope that this committee will also have some influence in the many categories that we've heard about today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paula. Any questions from members? Okay, seeing none, thank you for your presentation. And our final speaker is Alan Liu from the Queen Street West BIA. Welcome to the committee, Alan. You have 5 minutes to speak. And when you're getting close to the end of your time, I'll let you know. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, councillors, for letting me speak on behalf of the Queen Street West BIA. While we do share some of the long-term concerns that other members have already spoken about, such as the transit-oriented community compensation for the businesses, I want to focus today specifically on the immediate needs of our business over the next 0 to 6 months and things that we could use some help on from the city. So I'll focus on 3 areas, which I have detailed in my email as well. The first one being enforcement on standards, both building property ownership standards as well as construction standards in areas where work has already begun or will be beginning. We've seen on some of the expropriated sites that without additional prompting from us, they are not kept to the standards that we expect out of our own members in our BIA, such as making sure graffiti is taken care of in a timely manner, sidewalks are plowed and salted, or just making sure that the building are well maintained. So we've had to directly address Metrolinx and prompt them to take up these issues. Without our prompting, they were not addressed. We also want to take a look at some of the construction standards. We've seen on University Avenue and Queen Street, that despite the fact that within the staff report, there were information regarding how they would maintain pedestrian access, bike access. If you walk across the construction and university area, when it was first set up, I had to, if I followed the pedestrian sidewalks, signage, I would hit a dead end, so I ended up climbing a fence, moved a couple of them in order to get around the areas. Putting up a sidewalk closed sign is not good enough. I also biked in that neighborhood in order to get around the traffic. I ended up going into the construction area. It was either that or get hit by a bus, one of the two choices. So despite the fact that the staff report had mentioned these are standards that's supposed to meet, they are not quite at the standard we should expect. We should also be expecting, I know in some of the construction areas within the downtown, within buildings, they are doing much better than just meeting basic standards. So this is something we should definitely push for. Meeting basic construction standards, if not exceeding them, for the betterment of the neighborhoods. Second thing I'd like to bring up is the Queen Street closure, the diversion at York Street between York and Church, which, as we've learned in the past couple of months, that the streetcar can no longer run in that area. That will have a major impact to our businesses as well as visitors. We already have a lot of negative feedback from people working in the neighborhood. How can they get downtown? Don't come downtown because the traffic is bad. We don't need any more of this. We really need to plan ahead. We already have businesses making decisions about what they want to do with Cafe Tio during the summer. Basically, the decision is we don't know what's happening with the buses, with the subway, with the streetcars. We're just not going to do Cafe Tio. And finally, we do want to ask that the city consider putting additional investments in marketing and communications. As I mentioned before, right now, any coverage with regards to with Ontario Line, with any construction downtown is don't come downtown. Downtown's hard to get to. The subway, the transit system is not reliable. Our businesses in the area are still suffering from COVID. We only have about 40% of the office towers back to work. Visitors are down. We really need more positive press to bring people into the neighborhood. And that's something where I think Destination Toronto and other city communication programs can really help on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alan. Any questions from members?
Sorry, I missed the name of the BIA.
I'm representing today Queen Street West BIA.
Sorry, which one?
Queen Street West.
Queen what? Yeah.
Queen Street West BIA.
And what are the boundaries?
We are on Queen Street between, on the west, I think just shy of Bathurst, and on the east, just shy of University.
Of University. So,
Just
University to Bathurst, essentially.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Simcoe, yeah.
Simcoe to University. Yeah. Great, thank you.
I'm also a member of the other BIA, but I'm not representing them today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions from members? Councillor Moyes? Okay, thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you.
So that concludes our speakers list. Now we'll move to questions to staff. So I'll start. Members, do you have any questions of staff on item TM 1.2? If you want to raise your hand, go ahead, Councillor Fletcher.
Thank you. I have quite a number of disparate questions, but I do want to thank you for this report. It's very helpful in the way everything's laid out to be able to ask some of these important questions and be able to try to put a bit more of a frame around Metrolinx for things. And Ms. Powell was talking about community benefits. There was the $9 billion for the Connect 6 project, contract, and then the $6 billion for the Ontario Transit Group Awards. To my knowledge, there was not any community benefits language that was in either of those contracts. Wow, you're electric today.
Sorry about that. So through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, we have confirmed with Metrolinx, and in fact there is language included within the both the tunnel contract, which is the south contract, it's not a formalized agreement, so I want to be very clear that that's not the formalized agreement, but they have included in language that requires the contractor to demonstrate local employment impacts, the hiring of various professional, administrative, and technical staff. It talks about the project parties tracking the economic benefits, including employment benefits for the project, and they have to demonstrate how these businesses, the local businesses are being utilized, goods and services, including the names and locations of these businesses. So they are required to, as part of at least the South Civils contract, and we are going to confirm about the Rossum contract that they are required to do that.
So
So there is language in
provide
there,
us
but
with
it's
the
not
language?
specifically a community benefits
Right.
agreement, if I could say that.
As you've heard, they have a framework they're to live up to, so it doesn't quite meet that. But would you be able to provide us with the language that you found that is in the, I guess it would be in the RFP? Would it
Yes.
not have been? Yes?
Yeah, I'll do that, Councillor.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Sure.
And then for the next two that are under RFQ, and I understand that they're going to be closing, it says Q2 2023, Q2 2023, so.
That's correct.
Whether or not there's a note in the RFQ, what is in the RFQ that would let any bidder know about their obligations for community benefits? I'm interested to know, please.
So we will confirm that as well.
And get
to
any
the
language
community
that's
members.
there or not there. And the opportunity would be to include that in the RFP, but the practice would be that the RFQ would at least let bidders who are trying to qualify know that there are some requirements for you around community benefits. Am I right?
That's correct. That's correct,
Thank you very
Councillor.
much. And then there was, maybe I'm confused about what Project Co is. I understood Project Co to be that and who they are, and I don't know. Tell me who it is and what their role is, because I don't see them tendered. I don't see it listed here.
So through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the project company is the entity that's in contract with Metrolinx. So whenever an agreement has been struck on any one of these projects, whether it's, say, for example, the South Civils or the Rossum, there is an actual overarching body who is responsible for the delivery of that project, including the operations of that project into the over the life of the project. So what they do is they're the higher body, and then they go out and they subcontract out to, say, various contractors to actually deliver the pieces of work.
But they have contracted to Connect 6, so how does that, what's its?
Connect 6 is the actual project company.
Okay, so that's unclear. I think we need to be really clear about the name. So it's the project company for the rolling stock.
That's correct.
Ontario Transit Group is the project company that won the tender for the Southern Civil.
That's correct.
And there'll be two other projects. So that's exactly, it's basically the general contractor.
The general contractor, through you, again, Madam Chair, to the councillor, the term general contractor has a specific connotation in the construction world, but
Yes.
in general, they are the general body that's responsible for the various contractors.
And then they'll subcontract and subcontract.
Yes, yeah.
So when it says Metrolinx Contractors Project Co. will carry out construction activities, do you mean there's no overarching Project Co. company that on each of these four tenders that vendor will be responsible, that project award, whoever got the project would have to do all those things in each one of these four tenders?
Sorry, there again, through you, through the chair to the councillor, there are four separate projects. There will be four separate project companies
Correct.
who are in contract with Metrolinx to deliver these segments of work.
So they're to deliver the segments, but also on page 7, they're to deliver all of the project mitigation, all the construction mitigation in
That's
a
correct.
format. So I think that's a little bit unclear to me anyway.
Sorry, councillor. I'm trying to, and I want to make sure that I answer your question
No,
properly.
I do get it now, yeah.
Okay,
I've
and
got
if there is any other questions, by all means, just reach out
At
to me.
each one of the winners, each one of the vendors will be responsible
Yes.
in their area for the construction mitigation.
Yes.
Each project will be responsible
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then, so that's good on that. Do you know, we don't know when the RFP is going to be let. I've got quite a few questions, Councillor, for the North Tunnel and the North Elevated Guideway.
Councillor Fletcher, can we hold it to the second round?
Sure. I'm just dealing with this. Can I just have that
Sure.
clarified?
So at this point, again, through the chair to the councillor, at this point, we have not had a confirmation from Metrolinx when the RFPs will be issued for the north segments.
Can I just follow up on that? So once you've had, let's just understand the process. Once you have the request for qualifications, that everybody sent them in, Metrolinx then looks through all of those bidders and says, here's the 5 out of 10 qualified to be able to bid. So it's going to take them a while to figure out who's qualified. So the RFP won't be going out in Q3, likely.
I would say that you're probably correct. There's going to be an evaluation period that occurs to shortlist typically the 3 contractors that they would want to enter into contract with. And then at that point, an RFP would be issued. And that would, I would suspect that it will be at earliest later on this year and probably early into next year.
And if we wanted to have an impact on any of those next upcoming ones, we could make suggestions about the RFP.
So through the chair, at all times, whether we're in contract right now or in the case where we are right now for the north segment, there's always an opportunity for us to reach out to Metrolinx and ask them to take into consideration the city's requests.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Moyes?
Thank you, Councillor Malik. Chair Malik, sorry. I have a lot of as well, but anyways, I'll start. So, has Metrolinx provided the city with its plans for traffic management, pedestrian management and safety, or construction management?
So through the chair, perhaps I'll shift this over to Navi from Transportation Services to speak to.
Thanks, Derek. First of all, I introduce myself to the committee as Navi Tathker, manager of Transit Infrastructure Projects Unit in Transportation Services. Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Moyes. Metrolinx has submitted the preliminary proposals based on their constructability assessment of the project, what closures would be required, how the pedestrians, cyclists, and motorists will be maintained in the work zone. The actual traffic management plans will be provided when the contractor comes on board and applies for that particular work zone. I hope that answers your question.
Will that be a station by a station?
Sorry, do you mind just speaking up a little bit?
Through you, Madam Chair, yeah, the traffic management plans are site-specific. So wherever the construction work will take place, those management plans will be submitted accordingly.
In my ward, of course, is that, we have the Young Tomorrow taking place. We have the construction of Bloor Young Station improvements, for example. And of course, the Ontario line is going right through along Yonge Street by the Eden Center. And there's some overlap there. I know that Councillor Malik and I have been working with TTC and staff to divert the streetcar from tracks from Queen to Adelaide and to wherever. But there's still a lot of work in that area that needs to be done and to be completed over the next 5+ years. Is there intent that Metrolinx and Toronto work together to try to mitigate some of the issues that may occur in that area?
Through you, Madam Chair, absolutely, Councillor Moyes. The construction coordination is a critical aspect of ensuring that no overlapping works, or at least the overlapping closures, take place and completely paralyzing the city. That's not what we want. So we do sit down with Metrolinx periodically to ensure that there is a complete oversight of all the projects. And in engineering and construction services, the infrastructure coordination group, they also keep a database of all the closures that would be happening in a particular area, and accordingly we plan that with Metrolinx and other developers in the area.
Again, my concern is that, along the Eglinton Crosstown, I'm not sure how much communication there was with the city and Metrolinx. And I wanted to dive in a little deeper in that, when we talk about road and lane and sidewalk closures, short-term and long-term, is that going to be addressed?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, Councillor Moyes, we want to make sure, as I mentioned earlier, there's a global oversight of all the works happening, especially in the vicinity of this mega project taking place, Ontario line. We want to make sure that there's a proper coordination, so we can maintain the safety and mobility of road users, specifically in the built-up downtown urban environment.
Okay, that's great to hear. And of course, I've been talking to the community about this, and I have alluded to this with Metrolinx. But regarding Moss Park, do you know if there are any conversation discussions around having a second entrance in that location?
Through you, Madam Chair, to the councillor, no, we're not aware of any discussions with that Metrolinx, or sorry, where Metrolinx has confirmed that there's a second entrance.
Okay, I'll stop there for now. Thank you, Chair Malik.
Thank you very much. I have a few questions as well. Sorry, set the timer. My first set of questions is for the Transit Expansion Office. What is the role of the city in regards to the Ontario line, both the approvals and the construction?
Through you, Madam Chair, to yourself, the role of the city is, so we work with Metrolinx, first of all, to impart requirements that the city feels necessary within the planning. So we do provide that information. That information is provided through not just Transit Expansion, but the other city divisions. So they're working with Metrolinx. We then also receive the actual design submissions. These design submissions are a requirement that Metrolinx submit them through, and they typically work through Transit Expansion, and then they're shared with our colleagues in the other divisions so that they can do the review to ensure, as an example, some of the information that Navi shared, that there's appropriate, that Metrolinx or that the contractors are dealing appropriately with impacts to transit and transportation, as an example. We are also in certain instances involved in some of the review of the actual designs that are coming in, again, to look at it from a variety of different perspectives from the city's point of view.
And has Metrolinx worked collaboratively with the city in this regard?
So through yourself again, so yes, Metrolinx does submit through information. It is not, and as many of the individuals have noted, it is not a simple process in dealing with Metrolinx. They do, however, submit information through. A lot of times the information, because it's at early stages in the project, isn't complete enough for the various divisions to do a thorough review. So what we're getting is kind of the early stages of a review, then having to send back comments, and then comments coming back and forth. But to answer the question specifically, yes, Metrolinx does share information with us as they are required to do.
There were a number of questions and concerns raised around the city's role in the community engagement process and the understanding of the purpose of community liaison committees. What is the city's role in the community engagement process when it comes to this Metrolinx project?
So and I'm sure as you're aware and as everybody else is aware, the Ontario line is considered one of the priority projects for the province of Ontario. They are the group that should be doing thorough engagement with the local communities. So they take the leadership role in actually engaging with the community, with the councillors. Our role as a city is as a key stakeholder, key partner in the development of these transit projects.
Has the city been consulted regarding community engagement?
Metrolinx does communicate with our office, with other divisions when they are doing these community liaison committees. We continue to insist that they take a more proactive approach in actually reaching out to the councillors and to the various community groups so that there is an appropriate agenda set up before a meeting so that many of the questions that were raised today could be tabled and could be responded to them by them to these various groups. Sorry, if I'm not answering your question, please ask me again, because I know I'm trying to answer it, but...
Yeah, I guess to be more specific, would your team be able to create a framework for best practices for working collaboratively with Metrolinx on community engagement moving forward so that it does, actually reflect those qualities that you just mentioned?
So we could definitely work with yourselves and with the other councillors and our colleagues in the other divisions to set up a framework, or at least a recommended framework that we could share with Metrolinx, which we have. We've done this on numerous occasions by telling them that there needs to be certain items discussed at various meetings. But we can have that discussion and share it with yourselves and with the other councillors and our colleagues to kind of see how we can better focus, if I could put it that way, Metrolinx's community liaison committees.
So I guess we're scheduled to take a break at 12:30, but do we want to just keep push through? Okay. A motion to extend to complete the agenda?
Yeah.
All in favor? All right, thank you.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher, go ahead.
Does Metrolinx have a current rental replacement policy?
Through the chair, yes, they do.
And relocation of tenants and rental replacement policy. So you could bring that information clearly forward here to the next meeting.
So yeah, through you, through the chair to yourself, yes. As you're aware that, and I'm sure not as you're aware, but as the committee may be aware, any time that Metrolinx either causes expropriates or causes disruption to a tenant, say for example, or a landlord, there is a provision for them to relocate them. So there is a policy with that.
I think I'm asking for something different, a replacement for that replacement of rentals. So you could bring
we'll put something together for you.
All right. The issue just around traffic, there are these, on page 9, there's a traffic agent. Who's going to pay for the traffic agents? Is Metrolinx paying for the traffic agents?
So perhaps maybe, again, I'll transfer this over to Navi.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Fletcher, thanks for this question. Yes, Metrolinx would be paying for the traffic agents deployed
They're their traffic agents or the city's?
No, they will be city's traffic agents.
They're
but
paying for the
They're
traffic?
going to be paying for
Okay,
that.
thank you, that's clarified. On the, I think, the standard traffic mitigation, because as you've explained, there's 4 different contractors and they're all going to be doing their own thing. Is there kind of a common set of city requirements that people can read, that these are the requirements that we'd like to put forward? We know they don't have to meet them, but these are our requirements as the city. Do we have that kind of checklist yet?
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Fletcher, yes, there will be no compromise on the pedestrian safety, on the cyclist safety and the motorist safety in the work zone. So those requirements are going to be standard irrespective of where they're going to be implementing those in whatever part of the city. So no compromise from city's end.
So I'm just looking to have that laid out. Here's our requirement.
Absolutely, Councillor
We
Fletcher.
can have to the next meeting. And then I did note on page 7 that apparently the traffic management plans are just going to go to the community liaison committees. And that was a little concern to me. Could you explain that passage of that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the traffic management plans, as I mentioned earlier, will be site-specific and they will be submitted as part of the permit application by the applicant, in this case, Metrolinx's Project Co. Yes, those plans will be discussed by Metrolinx at the CLC committee meetings, but city obviously will have a technical review done from a pedestrian and road safety point of view.
So we could have all of those plans tabled for each one of these projects if necessary.
That is correct.
There's not just, and then what is their plan to constitute these community liaison committees? Have they told you how they'll be doing that?
So through the chair to the councillor, no, at this point in time, they have not, other than they will be commencing the CLC for the Osgood area shortly.
Well, we have a CLC at PAPE, but unclear as to, so maybe we would want to advise on, since they're all in our traffic zones, and they're generally CLCs that are about the construction management. They're not design CLCs.
You are correct. Most of the time they are for the purpose of making sure that from an operational perspective that issues such as traffic mitigation and other issues are being dealt with.
The caliper size of the replacement trees, I don't think we have a requirement. The giveaway trees, I'm going to ask to know more about this. They gave little things away about this big. Maybe we don't all call that a tree. And that if the planting plan, the thing that concerns me is they say they'll plant 3 to 1 or whatever, but I don't know where those are being planted for the ones that are being removed, and I'm quite concerned about that. So I would like to understand more about our requirements for a planting plan prior to the permit to remove trees.
So through the chair, perhaps maybe I will shift this over to Janie or Kim to respond to.
Thanks, Derek. Kim is on the line and she's going to reply. She's been more directly involved.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Kim Statham, Director of Urban Forestry. Through the chair, we do have requirements related to the restoration for parks, streets, and private land trees. We require a minimum caliper size tree of 70 millimeters, which is a fairly large caliper tree that you can get from nurseries. We require 100% native trees, shrubs, herbaceous, or ground cover with source identified stock. Councillor Fletcher, related to, and in the ravine areas, we require a minimum of 1 to 3 gallon sized pots for those naturalization settings. And Councillor Fletcher, related to the tree giveaways, you're correct. My understanding with the Metrolinx free tree giveaways in the communities, they were giving out stock in 1 gallon sized pots.
And also they put the same thing on, say they've planted 1,400 trees on the Leslie Street spit, but they're all fairly small, right?
That's my understanding in that kind of naturalized setting.
So just looking for a planting plan for the trees that have been removed, not we're going to do it later, but what is our actual thinking about where they would go? Is that something that you can let us know if you have that for our next subcommittee meeting? More information.
Sure, I can
on that.
address some of that now.
Well, okay, no, I'd just like to have that report around trees. I think everybody's so the information you've given us is great. Put that all into one place, and also where we can understand the planting plans for those areas that have been deforested by Metrolinx and where the replacements are going. If you can do that, I think that'll be great. Thank you.
We're happy to include that in the next report. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. And then I have one other question, which is about the wall. One of the few things that we've managed to get out of Metrolinx, which is supposed to be a great design wall that will run the length of the 2-kilometer above ground section. And note to anybody listening, we tried very hard to get it underground, but they refused. So we have 6 lanes of tracks going every 45 seconds, and there is a wall, and Mr. Whitaker has worked on that committee along with the city staff. I want to make sure that we have a commitment from Metrolinx in their budget to actually fund the design that's selected. Do we have any sense that that's correct, that that will be funded?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, there is no indication from Metrolinx that they will not fund that wall.
And who is the lead for the city on the wall? This is a wall we actually want, not to tear down. Is there a city lead? Is it you?
Well, through the chair to you, Councillor, it is through my office. My colleague Richard Borbridge is the program director who is responsible for the Ontario line. So he will be taking the lead on, and has been actually involved in the, I believe in the wall, the noise wall, the noise barrier, the design review panel.
In the design review panel that was set up. So any idea when that will be revealed?
Through the chair, the best information we have is coming in April.
Is what?
Coming in April from Metrolinx. They are
April?
currently working with the community to refine that feedback.
Sorry, do you not have staff on that group?
It is going through a procurement exercise, so that's held separate from the
community, but the group has city staff on it.
The design working group does,
so
yes.
Who's working on the refinements?
The refinement is being worked through the winning bidder of the design competition that hasn't been released yet.
So you just said they're working with the community on it. Who's working on that?
Metrolinx through their community engagement partners with us.
I'm sorry, got to be clear. Oh.
So, sorry, this gizmo is, so yes, the committee that's been struck includes both city staff. So there is planning staff, there is staff from transit expansion, and there are other folks that are on this committee, including community who are currently, as I said, getting making sure that the final design can then be shared with the rest of the community.
So I'm sorry to spend this time, Councillor, but a community group is not the city. There's a design review group. Which one is it? Just the community members or the whole design review group that's reviewing this? It's technical.
Do you want to respond?
Certainly. So the confusion, Councillor, there are community members on the jury of the design panel who are serving there. So it's that body that's refining the feedback from the design, which will be presented to the working group that we haven't received today, which does include city staff.
There's a jury.
The jury
It has city staff, Metrolinx staff. No city staff.
The jury has, sorry, yes, the jury has the director of urban design is sitting on the jury for the competition itself, and the design working group is a separate entity that was set and struck to provide input into the competition process.
And where's the city sitting? On both?
On both.
So who's reviewing?
that is happening exclusively through the competition process. So that is happening through the urban design team.
You keep saying the community is doing it.
The community is engaged in the.
I need to know who's.
Sorry.
I need to really be clear that the city staff are part of that review. It's not just community-led.
You are correct.
That was the motion, that was the requirement, and hearing it's the community over and over again does not give me the information I need.
So I'm gonna hopefully, and sorry, I jumped in for my colleague here, Richard. The Director of Urban Design is part of the evaluation. So Director of Urban Design for the City of Toronto
Correct.
is part of that evaluation committee. They're providing, obviously, the city's input into making sure that they're actually meeting the city's requirements. And they're conferring with community members that are on that review panel to make sure that what comes out is what benefits the community.
Getting closer. Not quite there, and only because dealing with Metrolinx is very hard.
We know.
Without having things really super clear, things can go off like a helium balloon in a second. We know that.
Sure, okay.
So I'll probably take this offline. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fletcher. And thank you, Councillor Moyes. Patience. It's important for us to stick with that.
It's important to watch what happens when you have
Yes.
when you have this process.
Go ahead, Councillor Moyes.
Okay, thank you. I'm actually going to be brief. I'm going to scheme some of the questions I have here just to get through this. Has Metrolinx informed the City and Toronto Transit Commission of expected or intended operational impacts to the TTC subway, streetcars, and bus services during the construction of the Ontario line?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, yes, they have. They have been conferring on a regular basis with the TTC, as well as with our colleagues in transportation services, as well as with ourselves. Although I see we have the TTC on the line, and maybe they can speak to that item in particular.
Sure, thanks. Through the chair, this is Lawrence Louis. I'm the acting head of service planning and scheduling at TTC. So our team has ongoing meetings with Metrolinx on the subway program roughly every 2 weeks to assess upcoming projects, and we're working with them on both a multi-year perspective as well as an in-year perspective to understand the impacts of the construction of the subway program on TTC services across the entire city. We also take that and align that with other construction projects that we are aware of, either through the city's infrastructure coordination unit. So we make sure that we try to coordinate impacts, especially on our streetcar network, so that we can make multiple projects take place at the same time to limit the impacts on a longer term basis.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to shift the questions a little bit now. In regards to the stations, the station names, has Metrolinx consulted with the city or the public about the official names of the station?
Through the chair to you, Councillor, no, they have not.
Okay, I hope that's back with.
Sorry, let me add. Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor. It's not that they just haven't reached, I believe, that point in time where there's consultation with the city about naming of the stations. Maybe I should add that clarity.
Okay, that's great. Has the city received from Infrastructure Ontario about building affordable housing and access to community benefits agreements? I know that one of the deputants, Walid Kugali, made reference to that at some point.
So through the chair to yourself, Councillor, there's a bit of I want to add a bit of clarity, and hopefully I can add this clarity. The construction of the Ontario line is being delivered through Metrolinx. The actual transit-oriented communities is being delivered through Infrastructure Ontario. There are two different bodies, government bodies that are looking after this. The work.
Yeah, I'm aware.
Yeah, so there's two different groups that are speaking to to the various components. The transit-oriented communities is a function of, as I said, Infrastructure Ontario, and they're working with city planning on any of the developments that would be proposed along the Ontario line.
Okay. And also, too, has the city received clarity from Metrolinx or Infrastructure Ontario about financial support and compensation for small businesses that will be impacted by the construction of the Ontario line?
So through the chair to yourself, Councillor, this is one of the items that we are, and this is one of the items that's actually discussed as part of the community benefits framework, is the compensation for businesses that may be impacted by the Ontario line works. So this is an ongoing discussion with Metrolinx.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Moise. I have some more questions for transit expansion. I guess what has your division, what has the city learned from the Eglinton Crosstown experience to improve our best practices while construction takes place on the Ontario line?
Through yourself, through the chair to yourself, it seems kind of a bit odd. I don't know how to respond. To you. So yes, the work on the Eglinton Crosstown has been, as you're aware, quite difficult. We have gathered up a lot of information as it relates to how they've worked on transit, how they've impacted transit, how they've impacted businesses. We have struck committees with economic development, our colleagues in economic development, to determine how we can best deal with these impacts on the Ontario line, how to avoid them, how to mitigate them. Similarly, we work very closely with transportation services on how we can mitigate future impacts that may arise as a result of some of the work that was done on Eglinton Crosstown. And in fact, I think what you're seeing right now with some of the work that Navi has mentioned is as a result of the impacts that we experienced on the Eglinton Crosstown. So there's a significant lessons learned component that we are working with both internally amongst our divisions, but we are also communicating that. In fact, there's a committee struck with Metrolinx where we are talking to them about these lessons learned from the Eglinton Crosstown.
So can I ask you to be a little bit more specific? Are there, kind of some of the biggest lessons, or the top three? What are you seeing that is significantly different this time around based on the experience of the Eglinton Crosstown?
So through to you again, I'll give you, as I said, there's a group working with economic development to determine how to better deal with specifically the business impacts. So I know that was Councillor Moise's one of his concerns. So that is something that is currently being discussed. Again, that is obviously a provincial. They have to go and seek the provincial government's kind of obviously approval for that. But that is something that we are currently discussing with economic development, transportation services, and I'll let maybe Navi can speak to. You've heard the use of the traffic agents. That's something that, and I'm sure that transportation services was thinking about this well before that, but I'm sure that you guys can speak to kind of some of the benefits of that as an example.
Absolutely. To you, Madam Chair, I'll start with the traffic agents. We use traffic agents successfully, I would say, along Eglinton Avenue, specifically between Bathurst and the Allen Road interchange. And I, kind of said successfully because that area is very congested, and definitely there was a relief after deploying those traffic agents. So that's one. And the second that I can give you an example, along the Finch West LRT, our staff has done walk through the entire alignment to find efficiencies where we can free up some of the road capacity, tighten those work zones, and look at the sightlines issues if there are any, and look at the pavement markings and making sure that there is a clear guidance around the work zones. So those are some of the measures that we have recently implemented, and we want to bring them over to these subway projects as well. And to add to this, having the regular patrolling done, having the regular enforcement done when the construction is going on, to ensure all the permit conditions that we issue, they are properly adhered by the contractors, and there is no compromise on the safety of people going through those work zones. I hope that answers.
Yeah, thank you very much. I guess just on that point, in the report, there's a section on construction mitigation, and particularly when it comes to pedestrian safety. And we just heard from a number of the speakers to the committee that regular enforcement, there doesn't seem to be evidence of that, and some of the accountability. It has to be, proactive on their part, and it's only addressed when they reach out. It's not something that they can kind of count on. So can you speak a little bit more to what the accountability is on regular enforcement and proper adherence, and how if there are any mechanisms in place so that it's not just the onus on the business improvement associations or the residents to have to be seeking out Metrolinx to address the issues, or the city.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I do feel sorry about the bad experience that person had reported to us. But at the same time, I always say that the community is our eyes, the communities is our ears, and if there are any concerns, we'll be happy to listen to and also act on them as quickly as we can. We have a dedicated team of transportation bylaw officers, as well as work zone traffic coordinators, who are specifically dedicated to the subway projects. So in terms of enforcing, we want to make sure that as the construction begins, there's a regular schedule of those people going out there on the site and making sure that they keep an eye on the construction activities that will be going on in the future, and ensuring that they are actually referring back to the traffic control plans or the management plans that were approved with the permit application, ensuring that all the setup is as per the approved plan and not deviating and compromising the safety of our vulnerable road users.
Thank you. I'll leave it at that, and back to you, Councillor Fletcher. Councillor Moyes, do you have more questions?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I guess I just have more questions. I guess my next set of questions is to planning. Is someone here from planning?
Hi, it's Hans Rico here. I'm a senior project manager in city planning.
Thank you very much, Hans. Is the University Park currently under your department?
City planning has a role in working on University Park, but transportation services and parks, forestry, and recreation are leading. Okay.
So I guess the question for everyone is just getting a sense of what the current status is of University Park. I don't know who the most appropriate person is to answer that question.
So, Madam Chair, so the status of University Avenue, so we have been directed to report back to Executive Committee in 2023 with an update on status of the planning, which I should say is a multi-divisional approach, with a lot of the initial planning coming through transportation and some of the other considerations around the infrastructure that is underneath University Avenue. There's a feasibility study that has been directed through planning to complete that looks at all the underground infrastructure. And when all that work is complete and put together, we're planning to report back to Executive Committee as directed by Council.
Thank you very much. And I guess building on what we heard today at the committee, has the Osgood Station planning and proposal played a role in the park's development up until this point?
So, Madam Chair, the Osgood Station considerations were not being discussed at the time of that direction from Executive Committee. Those are new discussions that have evolved just over the last few months. But we're happy to include those in our report back as well, if directed.
That would be great, thank you. I guess maybe this is planning, following from, again, what we heard from the speakers earlier today. Can you share with us what conversations have taken place in regards to community benefits with Metrolinx? I don't know if that's planning or if it's someone else.
Through you, Madam Chair, maybe I'll take that on, Hans, as opposed to yourself. So the community benefits, as it relates to the discussion that we had previously, there is language within the contract that's requiring the various project companies to take into consider community benefits. However, as I mentioned previously to Councillor Fletcher, there isn't a formalized framework, if I could put it to that way. And that's something that's currently in progress. So we're working with Metrolinx to kind of get, there is language within the contracts, but again, that needs to be further refined.
Well, I guess, is it an active conversation with Metrolinx?
Yeah, yes, it is. There's actually, and through our colleagues in SDFA, April Lim, there is an actual working group that has been established to actually look at community benefits. It's an advisory group, and it does include Metrolinx on that advisory group as well.
And I guess, sorry if you already addressed this, but to your knowledge, has the public been involved up until this point?
I'm not quite sure, Councillor. I'll have to ask April if they have.
Yeah, I guess TCBN, as far as we heard.
Again, through yourself, Councillor, I do believe that April and her group are in close communication with the Toronto Community Benefits Network. Oh, sorry. I see April over there, so I'm going to turn it over to you, April. My apologies, I didn't see her there.
No worries. Can you just repeat the question? I'm sorry.
I was just asking if there's an active conversation with Metrolinx about community benefits, and to your knowledge, whether the public has been involved.
So, I mean, by public, so we are in addition to the conversations that Derek's team is convening and having, we do have more specific community benefit specific conversations with the community supports team at Metrolinx, and they are the conduit to the community liaison and the various community engagement initiatives that they lead.
So the public has been involved or not up until this point?
It is my understanding that they have been involved, yes.
Okay. And do you know in what capacity?
I believe it is through the capacity of consultations and engagement initiatives.
So just general community engagement where community benefits might come up, or specifically on community benefits?
That is my understanding, but we'd have to specify.
Sorry, that your understanding is that it's a general community
Yes.
engagement where community benefits might come up?
The general, yes, where community benefits might be an item on the agenda of the general consultation, but we'd have to clarify that with the Metrolinx community supports team.
Okay, and I guess how has your office been involved in the I guess active conversation on community benefits and the engagement of the public or specific stakeholders related to community benefits?
So our engagement has been fairly light in terms of we work with or engage with Metrolinx through taking Derek's team's leadership on kind of taking the lead on the general conversations with Metrolinx and then pulling us in on the community benefit specific pieces.
Okay, I guess kind of switching tacks. We heard it through some of the presentations this morning, and I have been told that as part of the federal funding agreement, there are affordable housing requirements. Is that correct?
You, Madam Chair, not that we're aware of. Perhaps there is federal requirements, but they are not. There has not been anything communicated from Metrolinx with regards to affordable housing.
Where are those? Like, where do those federal funding agreements sit relative to the city?
If there is a federal agreement for housing that's imposed, if I could use that language, it would be with the province. The province would need to kind of respond to that.
Yeah, so as far as I understand, the federal funding for this transit project, there's a requirement around affordable housing. So I guess that agreement would be with the province and we wouldn't have any, yeah? Well, I'd like to know where it is, if we know. I mean, otherwise we can move them up.
So just to be clear, funding agreements are between the province and the federal government.
Okay, thank you. What work has the city done around affordable housing as it relates to the Ontario line?
So perhaps I'm gonna suggest that maybe our colleagues in city planning speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Toigo. Through the chair, there is as we had reported to executive committee in, I believe it was April 2022, there is a value allocation framework associated with the Transit-Oriented Communities program, and that would include discussions around affordable housing at the transit-oriented communities. So I would refer you back to that April 2022 report.
Thank you very much. My next set of questions is for economic development. Thank you. I'm interested to know how the BIA office has been involved in the Ontario line planning up until this point.
To the chair, thank you for the question. So the BIA office has been involved a few different ways. We have funding, direct funding from Metrolinx to support an economic development officer who is assigned to work directly with those impacted BIAs in coordinating and attempting to address their concerns related to Ontario line construction. We have a construction mitigation grant program that has currently just closed its first round of applications. Those applications are still being processed. We expect a second round to open up in June. Also working with our entrepreneurship office that's part of economic development and culture to set up some small business support that would be directed to those Ontario line businesses.
Transit Expansion mentioned that we've learned from the Eglinton Crosstown how to improve supports for businesses along the Ontario line, and there's a significant initiative that demonstrates some of that learning. Can you share a little bit more with us about that?
Not completely clear on the question, but when I heard the question earlier, I thought one of the key learnings from Eglinton was that city services needed to get involved in a much earlier time. For Eglinton, our office got involved significantly after the impacts of significant construction were felt by those businesses. So we're involved at a much earlier time in the process to try and provide support so the businesses are as healthy as they can be prior to significant impacts from construction being felt.
Do you mind sharing a few more specifics about what that looks like? What are the protections being made for small businesses affected?
Right. So as I had mentioned previously, we have the Construction Mitigation Grant Program, which allows businesses to propose different projects that the city will provide funding for, and that would be coordinated. The monies would flow through the BIAs. Again, working with our entrepreneurship office to get business training and other supports that would be directed to those BIAs that are in the impacted areas. Those are two of the direct efforts towards businesses.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure that we've heard it as the Ontario Line construction is imminent, the concerns around the impact on live music venues, the types of venues that don't have an opportunity to, pivot in the way that some other businesses do. What protections are we putting in place to ensure our live music venues are safeguarded and might be able to operate during construction?
To the chair, thank you for the question. I don't know if my colleague Mike Tanner is here with us today, but I'll answer on his behalf. We are early in the process of working with the live music venues to provide support for them. We have identified those venues that are most likely to be impacted and trying to work with them to identify potential issues and mitigation. But I will admit we're not very far along in that process.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Yep, go ahead, Councillor.
Based on your questions, I have a couple of follow-up. One is I'm very interested, and I'll make that. What is the funding breakdown between the federal government and the province for the Ontario Line? What percentage is being contributed from the federal government, if any? Are you aware of any?
So through the chair, no, we are not. We don't have any sort of information with regards to whatever agreement exists between the province and the federal government.
And could you access that?
No, I'm being honest with you, Councillor. I do not believe that the province will give us that information.
But would the federal government not give us that information?
No, they will not. The federal government will typically work through the province, and I don't believe that the province will give us that information.
So just to be clear, the federal government's making either we don't know, it could be quite a sizable contribution to this project, but the public cannot know how much. Is that, and I'm not blaming you, I'm just laying that out. That's the state of affairs that we're looking at here.
We don't, to answer your question, and I think you appreciate, but we don't have that level of information. There's a variety of different sharing that goes on between the province and the federal government as it relates to transit projects. We just are not aware of or privy to that information.
Yes, but it does exist. It should be public, but you don't have it. I'm not making you go get it. But
perhaps.
Get it.
I'm going to say, sure. I mean, it's federal money, but again, that'll be something that has to be raised with the federal government or with the provincial government.
Yes, so our intergovernmental working group, or whoever it is that does that work out of the deputy mayor's office, city manager's office, could inquire of the federal government what percentage contribution they're making to the Ontario line?
I'm sure that they could.
Okay, so we'll make sure that they're going to. Thank you. That's the first one. The second one has to do with the BIAs, and one of the things that we've always asked for, and everybody who's on a years-long transit project that simply puts your business out of business, has asked for support for property taxes. Are we any closer to getting that, or has Metrolinx made any commitments to in that way?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor. I am not aware of any recent activity with that.
Would you agree with me that's actually what, at the end of the day, it's the rent for a building where nobody's shopping is one of the most difficult things on these transit projects?
I would agree.
Or the property taxes for, if you're not the landlord and operating a business, that as a tenant, you can't pay your rent. So finding some relief is still we're still not able to find that kind of relief for small business, even with this massive project, which we've seen here is now at $15 billion just in contracts that have been let. Correct?
Through the chair, I would agree that direct support to impacted businesses through property tax relief could be a critical support to allow them to survive.
Thank you.
Through the construction.
And are businesses aware that, which I know from TTC work, that if that there is a process for them to apply at the end for recovery of lost revenue? Are you aware of that program, or do we make that well known to businesses?
Are you, through the chair, thank you for the question. Are you referencing what they call injurious affection claims?
Could be, yes. So I know that some of the businesses had to apply for that, but it's quite rigorous. Maybe we'll look into that a little bit more for businesses, how to get someone who can help them with that, I would think. Would that make sense?
Yes, through the chair. Yes, Councillor.
Great, that would be great, and thank you. And then just around the community benefits, I asked Mr. Toigo about what was in the RFPs. Has the city, through your office, Ms. Lim, have you attempted to put some language into the RFPs around community benefits, the 10% hiring and everything else, and been rejected, or what's happened?
So through the chair, in conjunction with the Toronto Expansion Division, when those conversations have come up, we have provided the specific clause language around hard targets.
And could you provide that to this committee?
Sure.
And so are you telling me that Metrolinx refused to use that language in their RFP?
So I'll pass it over to Mr.
So again, through you, to the chair, to yourself, Councillor, it's not that Metrolinx has refused, it's just that they've indicated that they're developing this framework. They are, again, learning, taking the learnings from what they saw in Eglinton Crosstown, and they're now trying to actually figure out how to actually put together meaningful measures.
I hate to break it to you, but they've let 2 contracts worth $15 billion, which don't include any of it. So I don't understand how they can be trying to do that when they haven't done it.
So respectfully, Councillor, according to what we've seen within their documents, they have actually included some language in there. It's just not specifically a community benefits framework.
They have not included classic community benefit language in their 2 contracts, $9 billion and $6 billion, that have been already let, that would mirror the language and the operations on the Finch and Eglinton. Can we agree on that?
I would agree. You're absolutely right. There isn't a fulsome plan that's been developed yet, and that is, again, something that we are pressing on Metrolinx to actually conclude and actually come forward with to the communities as well as to yourselves as to what is meant by their 4-pillar community benefits program that they're putting forward. So yes, you are right. We need to get more information from them, more specific information.
So we have a very clear community benefits requirement. It's 10%, it's 50 million, it's all of these different things. Is that what we're advancing to Metrolinx?
We have, again, with our colleagues in STFA, that's what we have communicated. But again, April is quite correct. We haven't heard back that they've agreed to actually implement it.
So if we could get some of that documentation as to what we've advanced and then see what they've not agreed to, that would be very helpful. That could be appended. We can get that earlier. That'd be good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Is Councillor Moy still with us?
I'm still here and no further questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. If there are no more questions for staff, we'll move to speakers. Yep. Okay.
I have quite a few motions, Madam Chair, and I believe, oh, just working on them. Okay, fine, I won't do mine. Been adding to them during the day.
Sure, we can take a second.
Maybe just count, does Chris have some motions there? Does Chris have motions?
I do have an amendment or an addition to yours. So I'll wait till you put yours forth. I won't have yours in front of me, but
Which one of us are you talking about?
To make that happen.
Yeah, is it Councillor Fletcher's motion or?
It's Chair Mallett.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Fletcher's motion is going to go up first.
Okay. Just coordinate with staff as to which one's mine.
There it is. It's an omnibus motion. Many different things, particularly the Fontbonne Ministries, which is smack dab in the middle of the train tracks. Folks who are going to be displaced, rooming house, all of the tree issues that we've heard today, the traffic management plans regarding how they're going to the CLCs, including permit conditions, and get that at the next meeting. One of the things people are worried about is how we're going to stop, perhaps not in the other areas, but in the Ward 14 area, people coming and parking and using, the contractors using those streets. So let's think of how we can manage that one. We have the PAPE bus. I want to have another look, Navi, at the intersection with some other options than running a bus down a main street. And then Tabia, other measures for business mitigation. And then a couple of other, just we'll call them extras, the decibel levels from the EA all along, particularly in the overhead non-buried area, but in general, those decibel levels and vibration levels. I'd like to know who makes up the Connect 6 in the Ontario Transit Group, so we're really clear who's in that consortium. And then further breakdown of the finances for the rolling stock, which, what are the amounts for each of those that were in the tender? So what's dedicated to rolling stock, what's dedicated to systems, what's dedicated to operations and maintenance, which are the real cash cows for anybody doing anything. Long-term maintenance over 30 years is worth a lot of money. So I don't know if you have that information, but I would like that. And then I think there was a couple of other more new ones. Yeah, I just have the written ones. So there they all are. And for our next meeting, and thank you very much. And I know there were some undertakings to get us a few things between meetings, and I'd appreciate that too. And I just want to not carry on too long. I just want to really thank you, Councillor, for convening this, coming up with this, and including Councillor Moyes and myself on it, and to you, Mr. Toigo, for leading this report. I think, as some of the deputants have said, it puts everything into one place in a way that we haven't, and having a subcommittee where we can really drill down has been very helpful, because up till now, we've had to rely into being an item on the executive committee, and never is there ever enough time to kind of wrap around the issues that we're really dealing with the Ontario line. So this is a really good move forward, and I want to thank you and all the other staff that have been so instrumental in pulling this together, and all your good work on a project that you're not in control of. And I just want to say that over and over again. We're not in control of this project. We're relying on the goodwill of Metrolinx to come to the table to do certain things. Sometimes there isn't very goodwill, and other times there is, particularly around traffic. And you know that Terry Francoeur, if he has to go out and find somebody doing something, they're in a lot of trouble, because we don't, I think with the traffic management people, once they're hired, if they do their job well, I'm going to say that they must do their job well, or else on us. That will improve those relationships in the traffic zones. But it is very hard to have a project which we're just responding all the time to a provincial agency that is not necessarily transparent in the way that we are at the city. This meeting could never have taken place at the provincial government or at Metrolinx. It's impossible. It just serves to show the democratic nature of City Hall and the ability of councillors so far, haven't had that taken away from us yet, to be able to have these kinds of meetings and have the public be able to come, give us their ideas, and advance our interests in a very, very difficult situation with Metrolinx. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the mover? Okay. Do you want to go to Councillor Moyes or myself? Okay, sure. Go ahead, Councillor Moyes. Your motions are coming up.
Okay, I think my motions were additions to yours, but okay, I'll just take your lead on this one, Chair Malik.
I guess it's the custom that the chair does not put their motions before the members of the committee.
Okay, so again, thank you to you, Councillor Malik, Chair Malik, and Councillor Fletcher and staff for really helping put all this together. I think the public has been hungry for this sort of feedback and to express their thoughts and opinions about this major project. I've sensed their anxiety from the outset, even during the election campaign, and being at City Hall, the subject of the Ontario line kept coming up through various meetings and associations and associations and BIAs that I talk to on a regular basis. So, and it was nice to see some of these regular faces come in and address us today. So, with that being said, the motion that's before you is really reflective of feedback from various individuals and groups that I just alluded to, and even people from your various wards as well. And so I'm not going to read it line by line, because it's very long, but it just talk about some of the issues I talked about during my questioning of staff, some of which was about interacting with Metrolinx and the city, making sure that there's clear direction and coordination. Even talked about perhaps naming of stations and more direct things that affect my ward as well, especially around Moss Park as well. I talked about housing in regards to Infrastructure Ontario and so forth. So anyways, I do hope that staff is able to, if this motion is passed and the committee is okay with it, that staff will dig big, or it's hard to say, deeper, and help us find some of these unanswered questions. So with that, I will stop there for now. Thank you, Chair Malik.
Thank you. Any questions for the mover? Okay, I will share my motions as well. Thank you. The first motion is deleting the word subcommittee and having the semi-annual reporting from the Executive Director of Transit Expansion go to Toronto East York Community Council. I guess that's self-explanatory, so that the subcommittee, we imagine that it is time-bound, and but this allows us to ensure that there are updates over the course of the life of the project that land us at TOICC. The next set of motions are, again, to echo my colleagues, reflecting the concerns that were shared here and the questions that we've been hearing from community stakeholders and residents, our local businesses, and with our own engagement with Metrolinx. The City of Toronto deserves much-needed transit infrastructure, and we deserve it to be built well. And we know that the construction of the Ontario line must be responsible and transparent with real community collaboration. This subcommittee allows us to, engage more information from across city divisions and ensure that we're able to include our communities in some strong recommendations to Metrolinx about how we want to see the implementation and the construction occur as the Ontario line work begins imminently. I also won't read the motions, but it is the first part of the motion is making visible the work across divisions on the Ontario line. And the second part is addressing some of the concerns that were raised about the city's participation in the construction liaison committees. And the third part is to obtain more information about the community benefits agreements, the affordable housing requirements. And the fourth part is talking a little bit more about the framework around the construction liaison committees and how, and there's actually a number of questions that were laid out in this previous item, and to be able to obtain the information around that. And finally, the last two parts are related to more information regarding the University Park and the alternate locations for the Osgood station. Thank you to staff, to my colleagues, and as work prepares to begin imminently on the Ontario Line project, it really is crucial that we're able to give this leadership, knowing the constraints that we have, knowing how squarely the decision-making is in Metrolinx's hands, and we will relentlessly fight for our communities and for the best outcome in the process of this transit project. This is just the start of this process, and looking forward to when we come together next.
Thank you very much. I just have one more point. I just want to be clear that all of the mayor's powers that he had taken under the strong mayor system were delegated back to staff, so that the integrity of the public service has been restored here. As I understand it, there's no more mayor direction unless it's simply, that's all been delegated back to staff. So I just want to be crystal clear at every meeting that I'm at that we're in a period now where we have no mayor, that the deputy mayor is not the mayor, that the public service, their integrity has been restored. They're not under the complete authority of a strong mayor system. And we'll see what happens with the by-election, which kind of mayor we get at that time. I just wanted to make that statement, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all right. So the first motion from Councillor Fletcher, all in favor?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And the motion carries.
Vote to count, not a big vote.
The next motion from Councillor Moyes.
Aye.
All in favor? And the motion carries. And the motion, 3A. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And motion 3B, all in favor?
Aye.
And the motion carries. Thank you, everyone, and that concludes our business. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, have a good day.
You have a good day. I wish I was with you.